Okay, so I'm going to just go outside the door very soon to just see what's available. It's after dark. I'm late, unfortunately. Um, and I was going to say the usual thing that we are spiritual beings in an artificial domain. Now, when I say that, you know, there is a difference between different people or, apparent people in this artificial domain that is a matrix, which is a controlled system. And that's why I'm now at this late stage. I should have done it 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, even for that matter, but two would have been enough when I became aware that some people do film the Matrix, or at least try to film it and try to show it. Recently, I just accidentally almost got really annoyed about the noise, and probably something clicks over in your mind to where you've seen, like the week before, I had watched, at the recommendation of a subscriber, I might add, Sean Thomas Yearwood, suggested me looking. Sometimes people will suggest that you look at particular videos. I usually do, but sometimes, and I'm going to be long-winded here, I shouldn't be even mentioning this really, because it's just that I haven't got enough space to do all this. I would quite happy to, if yous are happy to listen, for me going on for ages. But but either way, I was told to look at some videos of uh, people that um, are being tracked by this systematic system. I don't know what I'm talking about here, but I do know what I'm talking about because I experience it. It's a reality. But I was going to say that, yeah, after that, I then got angry at the noise. And so for the first time, just over probably about 2 months ago now, I've lost track of when I started, just temporarily videotaping the noise that was actually just outside my door almost, to where I don't have to go like right into the matrix or out into the matrix, in other words, down to Norton Street round the corner or away from the house. So I'm just doing that now, but I have bought a camcorder and the card is in it. So it should be ready to go to actually film, although to be honest, I might find it a bit difficult to do it. It's stressful to go out into the matrix anyway. Very stressful. But if you are going to go out into it, it's probably not going to be any more stressful to film it. Outside the house, it is actually stressful to film because you are around people that see you all the time, neighbours and people like that. So you do feel, that's right, that you are being particularly watched. Whereas if I go down to the main street and the main road, I don't know any of those people in the actual cars. So it's less stressful that way, even though it is a bit more hectic. But if you're in it anyway, in many ways it might be a good thing if I could do that, because it might sidetrack me from the bombardment, because it is like that. And I don't know if that would come out in a video, to where the noise aspect in particular, I noticed it last night when I went down the road, and it was a Sunday night, so that's actually the quietest night for traffic. And yet I tried to find a spot to sit down for a little period of time. And I'm stressed sitting on a public street anyway, but to find a spot where it should be away from the noise of the traffic. But I was not able to find a spot that didn't have some noise going on. And And this is what the matrix is. It is designed to keep you continually on edge. You know, I actually know that now. Like you know how they used to say if you're nervous, your hand shakes. Well, obviously my hand's not shaking, but I can tell that my head is kind of not fully under my control all the time. There is a nervousness there. I can't explain it, but either way, that's not the point. But I'm getting convoluted again. But I've got the card in the camcorder, and this is just a point that I'm going to make. How long would you say that it should take? Like you have two people. I don't know how to put the card in the camcorder, so I ask someone else how to put the card in the camcorder. And there's probably only two ways that you can slot this little card into the camcorder. Only two ways. So, you know, it should take, I would say, 30 seconds to a minute, okay, to just slot something in. Obviously, I was having a bit of difficulties because I had my gloves. There is a motorbike zooming past. These motorbikes seem to have got rather loud. I should like to perhaps get them on video. And they might even be happy to be on video too, because they clearly like drawing attention to themselves with their bikes and things. And this is something that has also escalated. I've diverged from the camcorder, I know, but that's something that's escalated over the last 2 years to where you hardly ever had a motorbike or any bikes on the road, on the street, to where you now have them going, you know, well, I would like to show that but there again, it's before and after. It's it's a change that's happened fairly quickly. That's what I'm saying. You know, like when things change from being a certain number of cars, a certain type of car, a certain type of vehicle on the road, whether you have more big trucks, what you'd call, I don't know the name of all the vehicles, you know, I'd have to show it. That's probably the best way is to show it, but even then it would have to be a comparison with before. That's the problem, because people say, well, that's a busy road. Maybe they're doing a lot of construction. Well, I wouldn't deny that. The matrix covers itself very well, as does its matrix people. They will always offer the explanation. Now, I'm supposed to be going out here. But at any rate, it took me about an hour to slot a simple little card into a camcorder. Because when you are dealing with people that can't even just say to you simply, because okay, so I'm a dilly. I'm the first to admit that. I'm not technical and I do have problems even with simple things. But it's still only two ways you can put a card. You could say, face it this way, slot it in a certain, just push it in. It'd be like saying, you know, I'm putting a square into a square space. You know, you have to have it the right way facing, obviously, and all that. But either way, it took me an hour to get it in, because although the person that was telling me how to put it in knows a lot about these sorts of memory sticks and memory cards and things, because they use all these things and have been using them since they were probably quite young, and I am not up on any of it. You know, they should be able to say, just slot it in with the red side facing and this or that. But instead it took an hour because they convoluted. Even I'm like boggled. I'm like, this was really so simple when it finally goes in. So I'm like, why did you explain something that a child could explain? But of course, you know, in 2 seconds almost. And instead it takes an hour. And then even after the hour, it doesn't work, because then you've got to now get it working with a computer, because these days you don't just put a battery or something in things. So that's why I haven't got it going. Maybe I shouldn't have bought it. I should use the mobile, but see, I don't want to take this mobile outside. I take it outside the door. That's the furthest I've ever took it. I've never took this mobile that I'm using here to make the videos, and have been for the last 2 years. Never took it outside really, or down the street or anything. That's just, I just know I'll drop it or have a problem. And it was a reasonably good one. So, but of course I'm silly. But I want something that I can take around and be rough and ready with if I'm going to be doing that, because I will be stressed. But either way, I've rambled on too long. I was just going to make a few points before I go outside the door to try to show at a real level for the first time, instead of talking about a matrix and doing the fairy tales, I'm trying to back up the fairy tales, or at least show that there is some relevance to the fairy tales, or the possibility of a fairy tale, or the possibility of a matrix. In other words, by showing a continuous pattern of behaviour by people around you, or cars or vehicles around you, or anything around you. I had to remember that, because I had it actually in my head a few hours ago, because if I don't put it right, I was going to, it's very hard, so these things are quite simple. I should be able to explain things simply, but because I am hassled and harassed by the matrix, I can't even I can barely make a decent video. Because I'm not bad at explaining things, really. It's not that difficult, but you do have to use the right words. So I'm trying to show a pattern, a continuous pattern that happens every day around human beings only. And that pattern is put into play by other human beings who are of the matrix. That's just putting it simply. They are employed by the matrix, if you want to look at it that way. They believe in its communities and justice, as that letter I tried to show you, that they changed that. You see, that's the only reason I noticed it, because for years you get your statements from powers that be, or whatever, whoever runs this Sydney, Australia or whatever, statements for your income, and they had changed it recently to communities and justice, whereas it was something else before. Maybe it was social security or government, so I don't know what it was, but it was something anyway. But it wasn't that, because because they're letting everyone know that what we have in play is communities and justice. We have communities, like what is around me, they're communities. They're all one, they're all combining around a human being. Or any person probably, I don't know, that they, for whatever reason, they are combining together as a community, because that sounds good, doesn't it? A community of justice. Justice sounds fair. Justice is like the balance of the scales, but they're combining around me and other people. And they openly put it now on the statements. So everyone around me, even though they pretend to be individual human beings that are just getting about their business, are really part of a community of justice. I'm not sure, and that is their way of living and their livelihood, almost, you could say. Most of them probably get, might actually, like myself, already be on a pension. But this would be an additive to a pension, I would imagine. And it probably makes them feel powerful and safe and secure because they are part of that, whereas you are not. And for whatever reason, they don't want you to be part of it, or maybe they know you won't be or can't be. That's probably closer to the truth, because I don't think I could be part of anything watching other people. I just couldn't be bothered at the very least. But if I was told that someone was doing something that really bugged me, it's possible I could get angry. But I still don't think I could actually, because obviously I better close that because I'm getting too convoluted. But maybe you know what I'm talking about, maybe you don't, because I'm not putting it very well. But either way, I was just going to mention before I go out, and this, I should have this over here because I can't hold it while I'm starting to get the funny stuff. Remember how the fella, and I won't mention his name even though it was mentioned on the video, because obviously you usually know, I don't know most of the neighbours around here by name, but I do know some that have been around here for, say, 15 years, because you know their names, or 15 or 20 years, because they've been around here so long. And also they've made themselves known to you at some point, even though the fella that was in the video that I spoke to the other day that randomly come up, as he often randomly comes up, pop-up people I call them sometimes, but actually that's pop-up picnic, because someone else mentioned that to me, I think, and I often think that myself, but it's a pop-up reality because they just always just happen to, that's what I'm trying to say, show a continual pattern to the behaviour of people around. It's much easier to show that if it's outside my door as opposed to down the street, because the pattern will be lost down there because it will be a different area and there'll be different people all the time. But they're still part of the same community. They're still all connected, despite appearances. And they're always on their mobile, connected, watching. They see it as a good community service to watch people, particularly some people, for some reason. And they may or may not know that real reason why they're watching some people or not. I don't know that myself, to be honest. But I assume that they probably do know more than what even I would care to believe, because you do tend to, as human beings, I've noticed this, and this is our weakness, but also what would probably be a good point, in the sense that we are fairly trusting. We're not gullible, but we do tend to think, oh, why wouldn't I believe that? Why would I not trust that person? Because you don't understand that they have ulterior motives. And also you don't understand that psychopathic people don't need a lot of reasons to dislike someone. As I said before, they can dislike for the most mundane, simple, petty reasons. And, they're not reasonable at all. And they basically, have a certain mindset. A bit like, there's a plane going over, I should be out there getting that plane. Might be a good one. It sounds reasonable. But where was I? I'm getting convoluted here again, and I'm getting I see the plane sidetracked me going over. Where was I? had a point to make. Yeah, this just occurred to me because I like to be a little bit fancy in my videos because otherwise I'm going to be as boring as anything. Sometimes I'll just get a little saying from somewhere that I've heard or something, or even a past saying. This wasn't a saying, but it's like this. And this relates to people around, despite appearances. You don't have to, if you like to kill, you know, you don't have to be offered a real lot to be a hitman, shall we say. You know, I don't think I put that as well as how I thought it when I thought it a few hours ago. But like if you like doing something, if you enjoy, that's right, like some hitmen probably actually enjoy killing. And sometimes obviously I don't know any. Well, not any that openly say they are anyway, and not any that walk around with a gun. But, like I say, this matrix has many weapons if you want to look at it that way. It's not everyone has a gun. But even vehicles are being used as a kind of psychological and trauma. They create trauma in your mind and even physically. Interesting that the fella, I wasn't going to put that video out, by the way. I've got sidetracked here. I'm going all over the place. I'm so sorry. Just can't keep the thoughts straight because too many come at once because I'm trying to impress or at least make some sense or something. But at any rate, like the fella that was in the video that I just put out. Actually, that video was probably more than a few weeks old because I wasn't going to put it out. Not because I didn't want to, but because I thought the fella's face might be on it too much and because he's too local. At that time, I hadn't made the video to where the neighbours stroll up and they just happen to then be on the video while I'm filming. Because you see, when he pulled his car in and then started to shout at me from across the other side of the road because he thought that I was filming him with the idea of lodging some sort of complaint, even though he knows that's not probably actually true. Well, he might think that as well, even though he knows he's part of the matrix and that he is not beeping that horn at a neighbour down the road. Well, because, he's beeping it at me. Because I'm the one that's hearing more of this than this so-called neighbour that's complained or something down the road. Now, I'm not saying that some other people haven't complained because these matrix people could play games with one another for all I know too. I don't know that. But I kind of doubt it. I think that is just... and you must remember, psychopaths are pathological liars. That's a fact. We all know that. That's almost scientific. And they have no problem making up anything. And I know because I have known them for a lifetime. In fact, as my father used to say, and he knew too because he was a covert one. Not up front and out in the open, but when you encounter the ones who are up front and out in the open, like I say, it's so clear as day. Most are covert in this reality, and even locally. It's not in their interest to show their true hand or to be... in fact, it would be totally, even socially, unacceptable. But of course, it isn't really socially unacceptable. It's only socially unacceptable to me and to the few humans that are around, or real humans that are around, should we say, who aren't psychopathic narcissist, who don't have this the narcissistic personality disorder, who don't have that psychopathy, if you want to know it, if you want to put it that way. I didn't put that very well. They're really psychopathic narcissists. But I don't. But like I say, that because if you have a naturally destructive nature and you enjoy killing, for instance, like I say, you're the perfect employee to be a hitman, or people that try to destroy or harm other people. You enjoy your job and you're paid for it. How happy they are. would it makes sense, doesn't it? A lot of people work in jobs that they don't actually, that isn't their passion. If that is what really makes you tick and is your passion to kill, to be a killer, then to be a hit person of any sort is the perfect occupation. It's another plane going over. But yeah, that person that I wasn't going to put the last video out, okay? Because that was done a few weeks ago. I think it was after the One Sun for One, actually, something like that. But I was doing my usual thing of going out the front there and recording the car matrix, or what I think is the car matrix. A pattern of systematic patrolling by cars. Not only patrolling, but there's a kind of harassment involved too, because it's not like they're even just patrolling slowly, even though that would be intimidating. But they do tend to have an aggressive manner to them often, particularly if you go past this actual street here. Once you get round onto Norton Street, they just don't drive the way they used to. There's an aggressiveness. There's that slight revving of the engine as they go past. Some more than slight, some not slight at all. But always making some sound as they go past, which never happened in the past. Before 3.5, nearly heading up at the end of the year, it will be 4 years since the Matrix came down on me, shall we say. Now, yeah, I wasn't going to put that video out because I didn't expect to have a confrontation or an encounter with the fella and his friends that drove up in the car on the other side of the road. Obviously, most of the time when I just randomly go outside and open the door, those cars do pull in. And in the past, they have often made quite loud noises. That's true. And I knew that that they had said there were complaints. But either way, when that happened, I immediately got very upset and defensive and felt very, as you could probably see, I felt that I don't like that. I know it's the funniest thing. Because to know that you're surrounded by matrix people in a matrix, but you know that they're covert and they're actually working against you and making your life unpleasant and difficult, but they're still friendly to your face. So you still prefer that to where they are, even though you know that it's a charade, it's completely false. You still prefer that to them openly showing anger towards you and then behind your back, as I say, stabbing you in the back more or less. Even though it really matters not, because it's like it's kind of stupid, but that's being a human being. So you still and so you're like, and also you're not 100% sure how far they are into the matrix. Maybe you actually think that if you show them that you are not against them, or that there's no you think you're being real with these people, but they're not interested in that. That's what even I don't get most of the time. I don't get that they're not interested in. It'd be a bit like this, right? If you were a hitman, say, like in the movies, you have hitmen where they will kill people for money, and they don't care. But occasionally, you might get a hitman that might say, "Hey, that person wasn't such a bad person that I killed," In other words, they didn't actually dislike the person. They may actually talk to them and find them friendly and even entertaining, but they'll still kill them. Whereas some they might actually kind of, really not like at all, or be convinced that it's good for them to do that. But it matters not. They will still do that. Because it doesn't matter if they think you're a pleasant person or even if you had something in common with them. They just don't have that mindset. That's something that I don't get, and that most people that are not of the matrix, because that's how I'm doing it now, separating, just don't get. because they're like, oh, we could be, like theoretically speaking, like I can get really angry these days because you've got the matrix around you. You can get to where you're thinking like, but that's only because you're provoked, and you know that if you think someone is trying to destroy you, you are going to be, you will find that easier to say to yourself, oh yeah, I could theoretically, and feel like, retaliating, or not that you could, not that you have the means that but you do, you have to resist that temptation, shall we say. That would be normal, whereas it's not normal for me to want to cause pain and suffering and destruction to someone that actually I like and that is kind to me and a benefit to me. That would be stupidity. But of course, there is a kind of stupidity to this matrix. That's why I said that song was "Stupid, Stupid World" is so true. A cat is singing more sense than what we think now. But either way, I'm gone off the track. Like I say, that fella shouted out to me, and I actually thought that the video had stopped, because I went running over in a frantic thing. I've got to apologise. I've got to make it sweet, because I don't want this fella hating me and causing me more problems, to where he will deliberately make even more noise that will, so that's why I did. But I thought that the mobile had gone off, because basically I didn't know that the video was still running. I would have assumed that because I have to hold this mobile very delicately, as you know, you've seen me, and yet I just went tearing across the other side of the road, apologising and pleading with them to understand my perspective, that I wasn't meant them no problems, no harm, which I actually don't want. I never did have anything against them at all. In fact, as he was pointing out, although I didn't go into it in that thing, a couple of years ago, this was a couple of years ago now, when they were out there playing this really loud music, I actually foolishly, because I was at that time, I was aware of the matrix, and I thought everyone is being bamboozled, everyone is being seduced by all the demigods, the music, and if they knew what was really going on, they would, like myself, wake up to it and would realise they're being tricked. So I sort of just, when he was out there with the music outside my place, I come out the door and it was there, and I actually sort of said to him, well, most of the music today, I didn't actually criticise his music, but I said most of the music is, I think I said something like, it takes over your mind. It's these people are not, the demigods or your favourite singers are not really your friend. They're not really these loving, creative people that are making music so that you're enlightened and happy, shall we say. No, they are trying to seduce you with their ideas and take over your mind. And I said that there's proof of it in that because I'd seen a video that showed, I can't remember now, but that showed that there were messages being sent at the same time as the music. I think they have a word for that, subliminal messages or something. I don't know, but there was something like that in a video, and I told him this very quickly, and he more or less said, I don't care. My mind's already gone, so I'm happy for them to take over my mind. And I come back thinking, oh, okay. I thought I wasn't surprised in a way, because you're looking at someone that's quite young, but at the same time, it's like openly saying, don't waste your time, go away. I'm happy to have them take over my mind. And that was a few years ago, so needless to say, now I sort of see, well, they have taken completely over, and this person is now of the matrix, because back then, that was only a few years ago, but, there's not that much, like if you're, say, 17 and then you're now 20 or something, you know what I mean? It's not, I don't know what I'm talking about here, but either way, I thought the video was not running. So when I looked at it the next day, and realised that I had actually recorded accidentally because I hadn't turned it off. I thought I actually pressed the switch before I went running over, but it was so all happened, as I say, without planning, and I didn't have time to think. But either way, I would have thought it would have clicked off with me running across, because this thing usually goes off even when I've got it still, which is kind of, I'm getting a bit frantic here now, as you can see. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous for us to be in this situation and to be in a... But either way, I thought the video had stopped. But when I realised and I looked at it the next day, just out of curiosity, I thought, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have recorded that, and it was all there. And I thought, I can't put this out now, this video, because since that interaction, which wasn't intended to be part of the video, was in it, and I thought, I won't put this out, but I kept it. But I didn't put it out. But I put it out yesterday, because I thought, well, also I didn't want too many people's faces on these videos, because they're local people. They're my neighbours. Even though, like some of them I know, as I say, by name. I don't know them people's name at all, or that fella, not at all. But it's interesting that they, but I think if the neighbour that I was talking to down the back, which is in the same block, that person was talking extremely low while I had that video running. So you couldn't hear a lot of what they were saying, whereas normally they talk quite loud. I don't normally talk to people that loud, but because I get hyped up when I'm doing the video, and hyped up. I do get hyped up sometimes when I talk to people, because I'm nervous and don't like talking to people really long. So I tend to overdo it. And but if I know that they're of the matrix, and you know that you're talking to people that are essentially playing you and acting with you, and that they actually know what's going on around you, and they pretend they don't. They're pretenders. But they're dropping hints. Some of them drop hints because some of them know that you know, and maybe, like I say, they because, like I said, those two neighbours. Saying things like, coming up and saying, oh, is there a conspiracy with the two girls that I was looking at? But I wasn't looking at those girls when that neighbour come up. I mentioned it before the neighbour come up, and then I was looking at the other end of the street. But they already knew that I was looking at the neighbours, the two girls, or that I knew that they were not really just two girls standing in the front of their place, because they know that. And they knew I was out there and would have seen that. And they also must know then largely what you're doing. Because that wouldn't have been possible if you think about it, because I wasn't looking at them. And also, if I was in a real street, in a real reality, would I seriously think that just two girls standing outside their own place having a chat just a bit further down was a conspiracy? No, that's because they know there is a conspiracy against human beings. Conspiracy means, I think I'd have to look it up. I should have looked it up for the thing, but that kind of means that there are more than a certain number of people that are collaboratively plotting against someone else, and that is exactly the case, because they are in a community that has got a set up systematic that's what I'm trying to show in these videos when I go outside, that there is a pattern. Because it's no good if I just went out there once a month and one car pulls up opposite or next door. It has to be to where you show a continual daily pattern, that every time you go out, without exception almost, that cars in the adjoining houses around you, within, say, the vicinity of, say, 4 or 5 houses in each direction, that people come out to where you visually see them and to where the cars pull into those houses, in and out, around you. Always. Too many of them. Too close together in a time span. And to where also most of them probably don't even live in the houses, and cars that go up and down the street and don't even pull up at all. That's all this sort of stuff. It proves little in a way. It's very hard to capture that and to realise that perhaps it only happens when particular people come out of their house or onto the street. Is it possible that while I'm sitting here now, that Parramatta Road that I could barely endure a few days ago with the noise? It was like semi-trailers coming at you. But, the continual, because I used to sit there years ago and didn't find it distressful at all. Whereas now I can't do that, you see. But is it possible that right now, while I'm sitting here, that traffic is not thick like that on Parramatta Road? Is that possible? Because that means there's a matrix, you see. And the matrix is around human beings only. Matrix people are part of the matrix, and they converge and set up systematic systems that are controlled. They are controlling human beings by this, because although it may not stop you from going to where you're going, you are very distressed while you're going to where you're going. So you feel very poor. You feel as though you're in some sort of almost feel as though you're in some sort of war zone, and yet there are no obvious signs of that. I don't know how to explain it really. That's why I say the visuals might at least show a very simple pattern of behaviour by traffic or people. That's the best you could probably do. And that is hard too, because if you don't film very well and you're stressed and then you get taken. But either way, I've gone off the track, but like I say, that wasn't meant to be in the video. But the video was still running while I was actually dealing with a neighbour that was opposite, they confronted me, and then I was responding as best I could, trying to actually cool the situation, really, to be honest. And they just laugh, to be honest. They just laugh at me. And I realised that because you notice how the fellow said, "Oh, look, I'm partially deaf, so that's why I make all the noise." Well, I've had a lot of people say that to me. I had a very good-looking girl that lived next door, only quite young. She's gone now. She probably cleared out because she probably doesn't want to be involved with too much of the antics around here, maybe. But she actually sort of, like she's talking to me, like this was a few years ago now, a couple anyway. I was aware of the matrix just at that point, but she was a young, beautiful girl, the daughter, I think, of the lady that lives in there, but she's cleared out. But I remember they were out there, a few people, and they said hello to me, and so I said hello, and I had a tiny conversation. At one point, just out of the blue, she said, "I'm deaf." Like that fellow, like he partially deaf. Because they know the noise campaign or the noise, systematic noise that is being created around people. But also there was when I think of it now, at the time when she said that, I thought, "You're deaf." And I didn't actually say it to her, I just sort of, let her say it. And then she rambled on and kept talking. And I thought to myself, at the time, and even when I come back inside, I thought, she's not deaf. She's not interested. She doesn't hear anything. That's true. But she's not deaf, because she was engaging all those people out there, holding conversation and talking. I could even hear her and talking to me perfectly well. And she's like, "Oh, I can't hear a single thing, like I'm stone deaf." Well, that was just at the very least, at the time, I thought that is not true. And you're saying it for a reason. And it was a psychological, it was designed, I even thought this at the time, to psychologically throw me off balance, because I'm not going to go into why it, obviously with the noise going, the same with like with that fella saying, oh, I'm partially deaf. Well, I lost some of my hearing many months ago. I've got most of it back now. But I had and I've still got tinnitus, which I've never had in my life, caused by all this vibration and noise that's been going on around me. They all know it. They laugh at me. That's why they throw it up to you. Oh, we're half deaf and we're deaf and all this sort of stuff. It's just them throwing up to you what is happening to you, and they get some sort of buzz out of it. I don't quite, and there was also some other indications too, because I won't go into it, but I have relatives that are deaf. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And when I think, I didn't even realise, even now, when you think back even to other people that have said various things, just random people, it might even just be in a shop you go into where someone might chat to you for a minute and then they'll say something out of the blue. It's because they're all part of the matrix. Doesn't matter if they engage you and you temporarily think that they are not part of that. I would say that in order to sustain a normal job, you might actually have to be these days. I'm not really sure. I mean, there probably are some real humans that are stuck in it. I have encountered that. Not very much, very rarely. I won't go into details because I'm trying to keep on track here and I've lost it and I'm supposed to be outside. And I'm sweating right through. Like I'm actually sweating right through here. That shows you, see, that's the matrix and the people around you, and just being aware of the matrix, even in making a video. It's, you shouldn't be under that kind of, I'd say, pressure, if you want to look at it that way, just while you're sitting inside your own house. I mean, it's not even particularly noisy at the moment. There's no noise going. It's after dark. Oh, yes, I can, I can hear a few cars going past and stuff, but it's not, it's not particularly negative like it can be at all. It's probably the best time after dark, but the later it gets, the less, because the matrix makes the rules, so it abides by the rules to some extent. It doesn't overdo. But of course it will be hitting a human being with different things at different times. But either way, I'll just try to make a point here. I'll try to make a few points relating to the past 3 videos where I have encountered local neighbours. And they're very local almost. They're right next door, all of them. Across the other side of the road. Just at the back of me here, which is in my same little block, which is only a very small block. It's 7 little places, okay? Housing department. Australia-wide. It's controlled by the those that control Australia, what you vote for or whatever, But anyway, low rent for people on low incomes, where was I? Yeah, that gentleman, I won't go by name, even though I know the name of probably 3 out of the 7 that live here, because they have spoken to me. Even the lady that come up in the video with the trolley that plonked herself in front. You know, she brings her own chair with her so that she can sit there and talk to me, which I, you know, while I'm standing there actually, but that was interesting. Of course, that's because she's got a disability at the present time. The Matrix has its plausible explanations for everything. You'd say, I am wacky to say that that is a plausible explanation that is somehow contrived so that these people can have an excuse or a reason for their strange activities, or if a human being thinks, oh, that might be a bit strange or a little bit out. No, they do. But I'm saying, hey, the plausible explanation is a plausible explanation, but it is not the real reason, because it's a matrix. The matrix has to present itself as being real and natural and plausible. So it always has a plausible explanation for anything negative it does, or for any, example being. But I'm going to try to prove the implausibility of some matrix people. But I'm going to be boring you, so turn off, please. I think perhaps this video is probably only for maybe one or two people, because I am really pushing even the limits of your endurance to expect you to listen. But I guess I'm just trying to show that these are matrix people all around. They are negative people that engage in a joint collaborative effort to suppress, really, certain human beings that they don't like, or don't want to be roaming around freely like they would be. But just let me say this: I'll try to prove implausibility to what was plausibly said. But you would probably have to turn that video right up really loud, and then I would be so loud that you'd probably wouldn't be able to, because the gentleman was a low talker, and he's doing that deliberately, because even I could only hear him because he was real close, but he was talking very low, as though he didn't want the neighbours or anyone to hear. But either way, unnaturally so, because these people talk quite loud around normally. You know, like even today I hear these same people talking very loud to where I can hear them inside my house, every single word they're saying. They're almost shouting like I'm doing now, because I'm so stressed, and because I'm in a matrix, and because, you know, you're driven literally crazy almost. When I say crazy, I mean to where you're not thinking and calmly, rationally talking and behaving. And that's not how it's... But either way, I'll just drain myself for the video. And I am literally sweating right through here. So the Matrix wins again. Archons always win. That's putting it fancy, but it's true. But that gentleman, right, and I'm being respectful and courteous here because, like I say, I make subtle videos. And either way, I don't really care. I don't care about people's behaviour. I believe in live and let live. You know, I could go into details about the things that he was saying, in the sense that it's interesting. It's interesting that a young fella, admittedly a young, good-looking fella, who is clearly only going with fellas, you know, has 3 husbands. But one of those 3 husbands is the neighbour down the back. I mean, I guess they're all living together now. And I would say that I can prove all this, okay? I could prove it. They're not going to New Zealand. No one around here is going to clear out away from me, I can tell you that now. He's not going with his husband, who is at least half his age. Not that that is my affair. but that fella would have had to have been 25, and the neighbour is, I think he is 60, because he did tell me his age a few years ago, and I know that it was just not that much different to mine. Few years, okay? No, I'm not going to discuss my age at this stage. I stopped counting birthdays, but either way, I didn't worry about it, because if you are untouched by the matrix, as I was up to a point, you don't feel old. And even if you get old and let yourself go, as I had done at various times, you can easily come back again. But when you come back, the matrix will not like it. The matrix will not like it if you're vibrant and healthy and just getting around. Especially if you feel okay. No, the matrix doesn't really like that. And I was aware of that. That's why it came down on me. And they were draining me gradually, because I felt on top of the world 6 years ago. 6 years ago, 5 years ago, it started 6 years ago when I just got my health back, 100%. Like I was in my 50s, but I felt like I was 30 again. And when I was up to that point, I always never had boundless energy. Not exactly an athlete, no, but I had boundless energy, very good stamina, And then I noticed a draining of that about 4 years, four and a half, it drained. That's because I was losing, and I realise now I was actually losing blood. I didn't put it down to that. I blamed it on my living conditions in this house, because I was having difficulties living with someone at the time, and I had the dog and everything. Well, of course, the dog was, all these things. So I thought that, I'm getting convoluted here. I could easily explain this if I didn't feel I was pressured for time, because I'm trying to put too much into the video. So I better go back and forget about that and go back to the fella, that's got that is that's down the back, that's now married to, someone who's about 23 or 25, good-looking young fella, and he's one of the husbands, and they're going to go to New Zealand. Did you hear that? Was it loud enough coming out on thing? Because I didn't know this till they randomly come up, because he brought that fella up to show me, you notice, Stefano, or whatever his name was. But they said, this is where I'm getting at. This is all about how it relates to me, because I don't really care about other people. It's only if it affects me. They can do what they like. And either way, I've known their mindset for years anyway, because they randomly show it to you when you see them around anyway. But all I'm getting at is that, they said that they wanted to, when I said that I was glad if they built a place down here next door, because you see, realise I'm so sorry. I realise that I'm expecting your patience too much to be ramped, but I'm trying to make a point, even though it's not coming across very well, that these people are all matrix people, and that everything is just false in what they say and what they do. In other words, their actions don't back up what they say. That's what I'm trying to get at. What they say will not be backed up by their actions, and I can prove this. That fella will not leave here and go to New Zealand. No one around here that is around here at the moment will leave unless the matrix decides it's a benefit, because they're all matrix people surrounding human beings, okay? And they like that too. They like being around human beings because they are rewarded for it. But either way, let me just try to be plausible. I was going to make this point even to the fella himself without being too obvious. Like, for instance, right? And I was told this because I didn't actually know this, by this fella too, because they know everything that's going on. They know when houses are going to be pulled down. I don't. I just cop all the noise when it happens out of the blue, with all these things that are going on around. They were supposed to build a boarding place a few doors down. Instead, they built a duplex because the people in my block signed a petition to stop it being built because I don't even know what their reasons were. But that was stopped and they built a duplex. Next door here, they want to build a boarding house too. People actually bought it a few years ago when the lady that I used to know, a really old lady, she was about 97, and she went off to the nursing home. She'd lived here for those 97 years in this little place that's next door to our little block here, just on the side over here where I'm pointing. I could even show it to you if I went outside. They bought it with the intention of pulling the little place down and building a boarding place, a big boarding place that was supposed to house people who were on low incomes and who had had problems and difficulties. Probably real humans, I would imagine, not matrix people. This is what I now suspect, okay? But the people in this block and that very fella that come up went around the street and got a petition signed by everyone except me. In fact, he actually told me a few months later, he said, he actually tells you what he's doing, so he's not underhanded that way. Yes, I took a petition around to most of the people in the street that they signed that they didn't want this boarding place built that would accommodate people who had problems who were on low incomes. Don't forget the matrix. Demigods, anyone who's right down the bottom is a real human. Okay, that's my view. That is my belief. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. So there would have been real humans coming there. Like myself, okay? They didn't want that because then I might have some real humans almost next door as opposed to matrix people all around me. That's how I see it. Well, I'm being blunt here, I know, and I think I look a bit red in the face, so I'm really hyped up and angry and stressed. But that is what I actually knew this at the time when he told me. I thought, why would they care? Okay, so maybe there could be the reason that you don't want a big place built that's going to overlook yours. There's probably some truth to that. But there is another reason too, because these are matrix people. They know what's going on. They're not their own people. They don't just, that's something that people don't get. But either way, this person who now says, yes, I want to clear out like you, and you heard me say on that video, I'll be glad if they built a place down there and these places fell down, because then they'd have to put me somewhere else because I want to clear out. And he said he wants to clear out too. And either way, he was going to New Zealand, I think, anyway. This is all rubbish. This is all just make-believe of the script. They're play acting in a play around me because the facts don't match what they say, their actions, what they do, because this very person, and he told me this, so it's not like that they've kept it from me, twice they have put in petitions to the council, the local council around here, objecting and demanding that this place next door is not built because they've put their reasons in. Obviously, one of them was now expressed, as he said to me, that maybe these places will fall down if they have to dig deep enough to build this boarding place for real people. And they were successful, but he went to court. Can you imagine actual people like myself going to court, going to that extreme to stop a place from being built? And they've stopped it successfully twice, because twice the people have put in an application to override these neighbours around here and everyone on Henry Street that are trying to stop real people from coming into this street. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. That's what I think it is. It's not about them really caring too much about what's built, because they stopped it down here. And yet they still built another place, a brand new duplex place, just two little places with matrix people, because they have money, because they would have been like where two people come into, they've even got a swimming pool in the back, I believe. So you see what I'm saying? Whereas they were originally going to build a boarding place for real people who are on low income, who are down and out, who don't have much money. But they could make money out of it because they probably have 20 or 30 rooms in it. So therefore, even if they're only charging a little bit, they'll still be making quite a bit because it's still only on a small block. You see, it works like that, I would imagine, you know what I mean? At a rent level. And the same here. Twice they have successfully stopped the building of bringing real people into just next door to me here, you could say. Even though those people that bought the place, I don't know who they are or whatever, that's right, these people that say they don't know anything, they know everything because they know what's even going to be built before it's built. They go to court. You know, like these people around here are low income earners themselves that don't even have a job, most of them. But they've gone to court and successfully twice stopped the building of this boarding place. As he pointed out in the video, you heard him. But then he said, oh yes, I'd be glad too to move out, even though he has went to those extremes to stop the building of this place. So if he was happy to clear out, like I said, I'm glad, let him build it and these places fall down, because then they'll have to, you know, I'll be able to move out. And he's like, oh yeah, I'd move out too. See, the actions, what they're doing, doesn't back up what they say, is what I'm saying. Sorry about this. I know it's ridiculous in this video to be making the point. All I'm trying to prove is that they're matrix people, that they say all sorts of things. They just make it up. They are not speaking what they really want to do. Most of the people around here want to stay here because otherwise they wouldn't go to court to stop something being built next door. In fact, they could probably even get a transfer. Most of the people around here could easily probably get a transfer. I put in for one myself 3 years ago. Went to a lot of bother to put in, because you can get a transfer, you know, if you're in housing department. And a few months ago, when a housing department representative rang me up on the phone to see how you are, because we are part of the Australian whatever that cares about poor little people, I thought, what is going on here? You know, like, this is a ridiculous world. But you know, when I asked about the transfer, I sort of said, I did put in a transfer because I am having a few difficulties around here, you know, like I didn't go on about the noise and neighbours and all that. So no. And either way, they probably know anyway on the phone, I would imagine, because they'd be matrix probably too. Maybe. Or maybe they ain't. Maybe they have a few, but it doesn't matter. But, you know, when I asked, I sort of said, oh, that transfer didn't go through. The paperwork was stopped or something. And I'm like, why? And she's like, I've no idea. It should have went through. 3 years. So if I had seriously been waiting here for a transfer, you know, like waiting to move, to get away from this matrix neighbourhood, basically, I'm waiting on nothing because they stopped it. And yet I went to a lot of bother. You had to sign paperwork and all sorts of things down there because I had the energy then. That was 3 years ago. I did that as soon as just when the matrix was opening up and closing down, but I still had the energy, and it wasn't as intense. That was when the first few random cars started to appear. In fact, that was mainly all it was at that time. I did it in the first week. In fact, I remember when I went down to the housing department office, how I noticed that there was a fella watching me standing outside the office while I was sitting in the chair waiting to do the interview, shall we say, to put in the transfer. You know, I knew that, you know, like, people just don't stand looking through glass at you while you were sitting in an office, not in a real world. It's rude. And yet that's what was happening, you know, even back then. But that was minor in comparison to now. That was when the matrix was just starting to draw your attention, to show you that you are going to be watched and followed, etc., etc. And but you see what I'm trying to say in that long-winded, ridiculous explanation, that their actions don't match up what they say. They tell you what you're saying because you say you want to go there, like, and I noticed that too. I noticed that even with next door right here when I spoke to her when she first come here. when she first come here and she moved in, and I won't go into those circumstances how I saw two great big removalist vans pull up right in front of me, one from the relative that was coming to live with me and her, all on the same day. I remember thinking at the time, this is strange. And I actually felt a bit funny about it. I thought, this is too much. I've got two big vans pulling in, because I was iffy about both. And boy, was I right, because it was an absolute disaster. But that's synchronicity. That's when you see something and you get that little vibe, you know what it means. But back then I didn't believe in synchronicity, because that was 6 years ago, six and a half years ago. But I still got that instinct, oh, this looks like something wrong here. But of course you push it away and say, oh, it'll be right. That just, okay, so we've got the two people coming all at once. But either way, eventually, she said hello to me and spoke to me. And what was my point that I was going to make? I've lost the point. Oh, yeah. Same as like happened with the neighbour here. She just moved in. It wasn't long after she'd moved in, and she said, oh, this is a great area to live in. You got your shops not far away, and you got a lot of good transport and all this sort of stuff. She said, oh, it's better than where I come, because she got a transfer from another place to here because there had been some problem or something. And she's like, oh, this is good. And I sort of immediately said to her, oh, I want to leave. And I noticed that the minute I said that, she was like, oh, really? Where would you want to move to? Where would you want to move to? Like, it was almost as if to say, if you want to move to there, I'm a bit interested. Or maybe I want to move to here, even though she'd already said, hey, this is great. She just moved here. Like, you don't move from place to place in a day anyway. And I thought to myself, that's a strange person. Because just because I want to move, because I've lived here for 28 years. In fact, I think it might be more than that. Actually, I've lost track of the time. I'd have to get the right date. And I've got, a matrix around me. And I've never exactly been real friendly with people. Like, they've always been a little bit dominating, even before the matrix. So I've actually wanted to move, and I never wanted to move here in the place. I was almost, circumstances led me to move here. I have no affinity with Leichhardt. I used to come from the suburbs further out originally when I was younger, but anyway, that's not the point. But I noticed that. I thought, that's strange, because most people would, if they moved to an area and they're really happy with it, and they move, even if someone else said, oh, I've been here a long time, I want to go, you'd think, oh, you're crazy, this is great. And also people usually like to live in different areas. Like, this is a particular area often it does tend to draw particular types of people. I won't go into that. But areas are like that, like different people, like some people like to live right in the heart of the city where they have everything. They like that. Others like to live a bit further out. Others like, different facilities and things. So it would be strange that just because you've moved, but that's because they're psychopathic, you see. This is my point. And I spotted that straight away. Even though the matrix hadn't come down at that point. No. But I'm like, you're really much more centred on what other people want or what they are doing. You don't really have any inner life in yourself, because you just said that you are happy living here, that it's great. But you see, you don't really believe that, because you're only living through other people, because you're psychopathic. Or a rat bag might be closer to the truth. I use that word perhaps these days. They are rat bags. Psychopathic, narcissistic people are rat bags. The only thing is that they're much more extreme than rat bags, because they are destructive. See, if they were just rat bags, you could actually not only live next to them and endure with them, but you just think, oh, they're a minor annoyance and perhaps a little bit negative in their attitude, and that they don't really know who they are or what they really want. They only want what you want. If they've got a chocolate ice cream and they're enjoying it, but they see you with a strawberry one and you look as though you're enjoying it more, they'll throw their chocolate one away and grab your strawberry one. It's kind of like that. They don't have their own, they only want what other people have. Whereas normal people want what they want. Like if I like strawberry and don't like chocolate, well, this is actually not true, by the way. I'm just using this as an example. I'm fine with strawberry and chocolate. But But, like if I particularly didn't like chocolate, but I like strawberry, I'm not going to envy someone else that has a chocolate one if I don't really like that, if it's not my favourite. But psychopathic, narcissistic people, they will still be envious of you with what they don't even want. Because they half don't know what they want. They kind of only want, like I say, they only want what other people have. It's like that. It's a very negative mindset. And if you've been around them for a lifetime and you see that, you realise that. They almost don't have their own taste. They only want what you have. Even if you have very little, they will still want it. And as they're insatiable, that's right. That is very much like the God entity of this world, totally insatiable. There's a title of a movie, and the movies relate to what they're expressing. The world is not enough. The world is never enough, or the world is not enough. That was a title of, I think it was a Bond movie. But that expresses the mindset of Matrix people and the God entity. They can never get enough. Normal people, real human beings, they might still want a bit more, but at some point they'll be satisfied. They'll even be satisfied when they get what they want. But the world is not enough, or never enough, for the God entity and its minions. Never. Insatiable. Unquenchable thirst. Unquenchable appetite for everything. They're never full. And they never can be full. And they don't want to be full either, because they have a negative mindset. They're full temporarily, but their negativity, their dislike of human beings. Even psychopaths dislike their own kind because they're human beings. I think, of course, they are often possessed, so that puts another light on it. And some of these things get a bit beyond me, I have to openly admit. And I'm going to go outside if I've got the energy. That's if the mobile doesn't go off. You notice how it kept going when I confronted and went across the road, whereas just getting out my door, I'll be lucky if it doesn't go off, just in holding it and not touching anything. It's weird, isn't it? It's strange. That's why I assumed that it had gone off and didn't want to have that fella's confrontation on the thing. But I'm openly allowing those things now, or putting them out and letting even that ride, which may or may not be a good thing, only to show you how plausible Matrix people can appear to be. How plausible psychopathic, narcissistic people can appear to be. You may already know it. You've probably encountered them. You may know more than me. I mean, I have encountered mainly only that, so I do know a fair bit about it. I have to say that. But at the same time, a lot of regular, normal people don't realise how vast they are and how clever they are and how good of actors they are and how plausible they can be. But also just don't realise their motives, because if you don't, that's right, because if you don't understand that someone, like I mentioned the example of a hitman, well, a hitman, will be just as pleasant to people. In fact, may even have to seduce their target in order that they can track them and eliminate them. They may even, like I say, they may befriend their targets. They may befriend the one that they are meant to eliminate, shall we say. I don't know what I'm talking about here. I really don't. I've really stressed and gone over the top with this. But because I brought other people into the video now that I'm going outside the door, and I talk about the Matrix and its minions and its systematic pattern that where they're controlling people and watching people and patrolling, all this sort of stuff, which is really a Matrix. I would have to say that if a normal person sees me interacting with Matrix people, it doesn't look as though there is anything particularly wrong. That's why I use the example of you have to know what they say, but then know what their real actions are. Because if you listen to them speak and you don't know what they're really doing, like I say, if someone wants to leave, but they go to court to stop the building of a place next door when they want to leave, so they shouldn't care what's built there. And also, really, they don't really care about the noise either. See, that would be a noise thing for me. I want people, fresh, real humans, to come into my street because it would be a great relief for me, but I don't particularly want to endure more noise after all the noise that I'm enduring now. It's actually defeating me at a physical and emotional and vibrational mood level, which is no good for keeping this reality at a reasonable vibration, as we've gone on about. Because that really is probably more important. But so I don't want that noise, because that will make me angry and my mood will be bad, because, I'm not getting any breakthrough, and it'll be pretty close next door and they'll be going deep and building. But that isn't the objection of the people around here. No, they say that, notice how he actually said, noise is one of the factors. But that is not what they've even put on their, when they lodge their complaints to the court to stop the building. That's not their complaint. In fact, the noise factor probably wouldn't even be viable, because look at all the other places they're built, because they could theoretically pull that little place and do like they did just 2 doors down here, where they stopped the building of the boarding place that brings real people in, and probably about 20 or 30 real people, which would almost outnumber the street, because we'd probably only have about 20, 25. I've never counted the number of houses in this whole street. You see what I'm saying? Because I'm not silly that way. I figured this out because I wondered why. And because I now am aware of the matrix and aware of what goes on. So I know that there is always the plausible, rational explanation that the matrix offers for things, but there is then the hidden, underlying, real reason why they are stopping things or letting something happen, as the case may be. Because they stopped the building of the boarding place, but the noise factor still went on because they built a duplex instead, which houses only 2 controlled matrix operatives. That I know for sure, because I can spot this now very quickly. Well, relatively quickly. Okay, so I can still be fooled, so I shouldn't be too up myself there. Yes, I have been fooled a few times, even in my own street, because you want to believe that not everyone, but it doesn't matter, because if you really look at it, if you've got people coming into the street as part of this systematic pattern of control, and even if you did have some few real people on the street, if they are outnumbered by matrix people, and if you are not given access to them, and I'm going to make this point here too, by the way, I'm losing it here, so I'm going to go on and on. Look, if I'm too much, just close off the video. I know that I'm expecting too much for people to listen to all this, but the only people who listen are those that are experiencing it probably and that can relate to it, I would imagine, to be quite frank. I may even be too long-winded for some of you. Sorry about that. But I used that example, I think, in the previous video where, and I could actually tell you the incidents just to prove the point. But if someone did come onto this street right now, that was a real human being. I mean, look, it's such a desperation time now too, that it doesn't come down to who you've even got anything in common with. But what I'm going to say is that what did happen, and this was before the Matrix, because the Matrix has been there even before it showed itself to me. It's just that I didn't know it was there. But I did notice things. I do notice things. But I don't get it right, because if you don't know there's a Matrix, you just think, I did know that it was neighbours. Okay, I'll give an example. A few years ago now, probably, doesn't matter, but probably about 6-7 years, okay, ago, a neighbour was 2 doors down. I don't talk to many people, but I was walking past one day and she had this dear little dog, so I said hello to the dog, like animals, and she come up and talked to me, this lady that lived in there. And she immediately seemed to like me, and I had a conversation with her. And I immediately thought, hey, you're a very nice woman. I did actually think that when I come back home, and thought, gee, she's very kind and very, I couldn't use the words, but I thought she's different to all the other people around here. I knew that. That's what I did notice. Different to all the other people around here, because although the other people around here talk similar and are very personable and appear to be very kind and very generous and compassionate and relate all these things, you know that it's not 100% the true reality of them. You know that underneath it they're a bit hard. This woman was soft. That's the best way I can put it, and probably not making sense. And I won't go into even just a few things she said to me, but I actually I didn't even relate totally to it, like her dream was, she told me, she said, my dream is just to have a few kids. That's all there is in this world. At the time I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's not how we all think these days, and I don't think I've ever encountered that in my life, and actually that's true. But and she liked animals. That was another thing too. She liked the big boy cat. And I think it was the original big boy cat back then. Pretty sure it was. He come up and she said, what a beautiful cat. I said, yeah, he's just my little friend that lives down. And she said, can I pat him? I said, of course, of course Big Boy wasn't too keen because he only used to come to me, so he embarrassed me. But that's not the point. She genuinely liked animals. It wasn't a facade, I could tell that. That's the difference. Whereas I know that so sometimes I've bought even the Matrix people and thought maybe they really do at least like some things. I now would be very doubtful about a lot of it. I would doubt that they really like anything at all in a real, true way. A little bit, but not very deeply, shall we say. It's just not in their psychopathy or in their personality. It's not possible. They can like things, but they can never truly respect or really like things. It's just not possible for them. That's just something that we can't comprehend, But anyway, this woman, I thought to myself, I can actually speak to her when I go past. I thought I can actually for once break my little rule of at least having a little chat to this person, because she seems genuine and real. And I thought, I don't need it, but it's nice. And I thought, yeah, it's nice to have someone that, just in the street. Now I see it as an absolute necessity, and I haven't got it. Back then I just thought it was nice, And I didn't feel overly nervous around her, strangely enough, because she was not false. She wasn't there with any reason to talk to me. She just thought that she was a real person and that I was. There was no, I can't explain it, but I noticed it. But shortly after, and this shows how the Matrix systematically changes things in its favour, that it can pull down houses, that's right, and move people away and bring new people in, which is what it's systematically done with me over the years. I know that now, I can see it. Whereas you don't notice it as over time. You don't realise that when someone leaves, that person could be a real person, even if you don't know them. In this case, I was speaking to this woman, so I was aware of it, whereas most people that have probably been here before, there might have been some, but they've been gradually, systematically moved out and replaced with Matrix people. Matrix people that are part of the Matrix system. And that are happy with being part of that community that controls and suppresses human beings. That the Matrix says you must control and suppress this person for whatever reasons they have. We know the reasons, but, most normal people, even real people, if I told them this, they would say that doesn't make any sense. That could not be possible. because it doesn't seem possible. You'd think, why? That's right, it doesn't seem rational. But that's because most people don't operate under the idea that human beings, that this is a low frequency matrix, and that human beings are not really low frequency. Even negative suppressed person like me is not really, even at my worst, is not low frequency. I don't hate everyone and everything. Matrix wants you to. Matrix wants you to be like that, so that way you don't rock the matrix frequency or the matrix boat or the matrix reality, if you want to look at it. I think I'm making sense here. But either way, this lady, she was living there and renting the place, and she put all these I think I might have mentioned this before, I don't know. And she put all these beautiful flowers in the front of the place, planted them. You know, it was completely dirt, and she planted them everywhere. It must have cost her a bit of money. And it looked really nice, and I walked past and said to her, "Oh, you've got some lovely flowers and plants growing there." And she said yes, and she was happy. A few days later, they were all ripped out by neighbours. Around here. And I knew who, because I had seen them do it myself. Let's just say this, that, you know, because I'm not totally stupid, I put two and two together, or read between the lines, as my father used to say. But you don't have to be, but you know, most people don't do that, because they're like, they just separate events. But really, if you know there's a matrix, or sometimes you just pick a connection. I knew that some neighbour had ripped them out. Even she said, someone around here doesn't like us. They moved out. They moved away. Because they're like, we don't want to live in a place where people are going to rip up all our plants. And they might have even had some other intimidation. I don't know. But they moved. And she said, I'm happy. She actually said to me, I won't see you ever again. She actually told me, she said, we're moving away. And we're happy to go. Because we've got a nice place where we're going to. We'll be right, and goodbye. And I thought, what a pity, you know, got a nice person moving away. But I knew that it had been my neighbours that had ripped up all her plants. And even she knew it was a neighbour. She just didn't know which ones. And it doesn't matter, because they're all one anyway. They're all combining. They just wanted to get rid of her. But the point is, my point being, that this is just a little example, and you know, you might say, is there a connection or is there not? Like, for instance, I know I'm being long-winded here, trying to prove matrix people or matrix connection, okay, that they are controlling the neighbourhood watch, which is a legitimate thing anyway. And that they are a community. Communities and justice, like written on the thing. You know, like, since when is something in a city a community? So the city of Sydney is now made up of communities, eh? Communities that, you know, I've lost it there myself. But it does, if you think about it. Because then the people around here, they think we're part of a community. That sounds good. We control our community. And don't forget, psychopathic, narcissistic personalities like to control. They like that. They need that, in fact. They don't like to think that they can't control people and their surroundings, just like they stopped the building of the 2 boarding places. Went to the bother of going to court, even though they are not socially of any significance. You would think that in a real world, like if that had been me, and actually that fellow actually said, we didn't bother you, that's why we didn't ask you to sign. He actually come up to me and said, we put the petition, got everyone to sign, but we didn't ask you to sign because we didn't want to bother you. Even low, when I think of it, he had the petition, and I come out my front door like I do with the video, and he was getting the lady next door to sign, and she was signing. And I saw him, I thought, wonder what they're doing, signing petition here. What's that about? And I didn't even ask. I just went back inside. But they saw me come out, so he could have easily said, hey, would you sign as well? Didn't want to bother me. No, they knew that they didn't want me to sign. They didn't need me to sign. Or maybe they thought maybe if I knew the real reality of it, that I might not even want to sign. That's right. because I really wouldn't have I don't really object to boarding places. I think it's a good idea to, even if I didn't believe in a matrix, I would still think it's a good idea to have boarding places where people who have slightly less money can live, why not? But either way, that's not really relevant. It's not relevant. I lost my train of thought there. You shouldn't have to be living like this. I shouldn't have to care about the neighbours around me. I don't even want to have anything to do with a lot of it. I said my policy when I came here was I don't want to get involved with neighbours, because if you have any little altercation or any dispute, or if they ask you, like they've done to me in the past, oh, we want to poison your tree, we want to get rid of this or that, you don't want that. So you don't want to be too friendly. You just want to say, I'll just keep to myself. And any friends that I have, I used to always say I prefer to have them in another suburb. That way, if I have any dispute or argument, I'm not living next to it. Strangely enough, I have avoided disputes and arguments over the last 20-odd years, 30 years, or whatever it is. But they still are not for me. That's right, they're still matrix that are actually, and they always have been. So it makes no difference. But you just realise that when the matrix closes down, that it's not about, it doesn't matter whether I talk to them or not, because they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. In fact, you probably try to befriend them thinking that maybe it might lessen something up or make something a little less. Because if people openly dislike you, they say, oh, now we can just openly, be really even worse, whereas it has to have a plausible excuse. But actually, I can't imagine it being much worse anyway, to be quite frank. So I do wonder about that. So perhaps me being, playing with the matrix people and trying to understand them. Or even if I sort of said, hey, maybe, just maybe, you're part of this community now and you're playing for the matrix. But maybe this matrix might be going down in some way. So maybe it might not, but they're not going to think that anyway. They're not. They live in the moment too, don't forget. Like all these people around here, they live in the moment. Everything's about moment gratification. So they're not really worried about the future, and they feel safe because they're part of a community. Wouldn't you? Even if you were doing something that breaks society's rules, shall we say, if that society itself is protecting you because every organisation is backing you. Like that fellow across the road that said, oh, I wouldn't, I'm a young anti-establishment type because I lost my licence for 3 years. Because, and then if people can, but maybe that's it. Maybe if you become part of the matrix, you get your licence back. And then you play and work for the matrix. And why would you not? Because, they're a little bit on the psychopathic side anyway, so they're not going to care about befriending me. And they don't know me or particularly care for me anyway, at best, at the least. So, if you know what I mean. That's how I would look at it. That's just being realistic. And this is a terrible video. These videos are, I'm trying to explain something and I don't like to be aggressive and, like this. But really, it's the reality of what is going on. If I sit here being little old, polite, little nice me like I have for a lifetime and like I would prefer to be, and if I was in a real reality, a real normal natural earth where there was no technological matrix around me with matrix people, I'd probably just naturally feel okay and be that way. Okay, so I probably have my moments. We've all, and don't forget, we've all played for the matrix. Some people have said it's karma. What's around you now is the result of your mistakes, your bad deeds in the past, etc., etc. Well, yeah, but I have tried to rectify them in the last few years, and that's even come back at me even more. So, don't you get some chances? I don't know. Obviously not. Because don't forget, even psychopaths have long memories. They actually don't believe in forgiving and forgetting much. They actually don't. And the dog is moving over there while I'm saying it, as if to say, that's right, they never forget. That's interesting. So they never actually forgive and forget. Even if they know that you didn't really intend anything real bad, and particularly if they knew that you were matrix controlled or matrix driven, or to where you have been filled with fear to where you don't really want to do something, but you get fright. You've been directed by matrix people all your life. You've been directed by, and you have been guilty, yes, of some of the matrix bad personality habits. Yeah, because I think I pointed this out before in one of my more very poor but kind of psychological insights into little aspects of us, or even myself, really, to where when you're young in particular, you do actually want to be liked. As you get older, you do become a little bit more realistic and say, well, perhaps I don't need that so much because, well, particularly when you realise that it's not going to happen if you're dealing with psychopathic people that have no intention of liking you. They just don't like you, and that is it. They never like you. I had someone a few months ago. I got a dreadful pain on the side of my head for some reason. I'm not sure if that's, well, it's matrix, but it's also me letting the matrix get to me. See, it's all a big thing. But I had someone that I had actually known for 30 years and still know this person. Speak to them occasionally on the telephone. Even though I had went years and not spoke to them because I realised at some point that they were a psychopathic narcissist. I should have known straight away, but of course I didn't. There's a plane going over. I'm just going to make this point. This is very personal, but at the same time, you have to be to prove a point or to make a point. Otherwise, and I don't like being personal. It's difficult for me and it's embarrassing. It makes me feel uncomfortable, to be quite frank. There's lots of things I don't want to say that I've actually said in these videos that I never intended to say. I first started out just making almost like a thing about the local area, hoping that, then I actually, one of my first videos was, and I didn't even know the full matrix then. 2 years ago when I made my first video, the first video was like, people are digging their own graves, but they think they're planting flowers. Because I didn't think most people were all part of a total system. I thought most people were just deluded, that some of them weren't even psychopaths, but that they were being convinced that even if they were doing something wrong, it was for the better of all. In other words, like if someone wants to suppress me, for instance, they would probably be told that I'm doing certain negative things, maybe for the earth or the world or something. And so therefore, it's good for people to be part of a community that suppresses her because she's a negative. They think we don't really want to do these negative actions against her. But if it is for the better for all, and I actually saw this written on someone's bag in front of me at this time too, where someone was walking around, this is for the benefit of all or something, so to say, hey, what I'm doing, pestering you more or less, is for the benefit of all because you are a negative thing, because they have been told that I'm negative in some way, and therefore, although we're not, they may even be real, they may even be people that are not as negative. I would seriously doubt that now, but even if you had a real human being that was convinced that, say, I was doing something that they found abominable, just as what they are really all doing is kind of abominable. But they say, well, look, that person is doing something that they can't tolerate. Like, I could use examples, if they were told that I was doing something negative. Obviously, this is not the case because I don't do those negative things that they're probably told. But, if they can produce some sort of loose evidence of it, or even if people just believe the gossip, like people around here, because if you respect the person who's gossiping, like these neighbours around here, for instance, if people have known them for years and they've befriended everyone, whereas I haven't, people will believe what they gossip about because they will think that they respect them. They will think that there's no reason for them to make it up. They won't know that they make everything up. and that they enjoy playing and making things up because they enjoy controlling people. And they enjoy the power that results in seducing people and fooling and tricking people too. And I see that. I can spot it now, only after 60 years, so it's not exactly an accomplishment, but... And they say better late than never, but I'm not sure about that either. But either way, where was I? I've lost the track there. Lost the track, oh dear. Making some point, wasn't I? What was it? Oh, I've lost the point now. That's no good. So you've got to keep on... Oh, jeez. I got a sharp matrix pain in my finger there. It just shot up my finger and into my hand. Now, this is just an example of the plausibility of matrix people or the explanations. Like if I said to a matrix person right now, a pain just shot up my finger and into my hand. But it didn't feel a natural pain to me. They would say, look, you're old, you know you've got arthritis. Of course you're going to get pain in your hands. Plausible explanation for a matrix technological intrusion into my reality or into my body or into my house or whatever you like. But I cannot prove that because they're not feeling it. But also if they're the matrix, they know what it is, but they're like, you know. But if I was talking to, say, a person like myself, they also would probably say, oh, well, yeah, you've got arthritis, so of course you're going to get... But I say that is not arthritic pain. I have experienced pain in my life, and I know the difference between... Well, even that's debatable too, because don't forget the matrix has always been operating, so even some pains that you might have experienced in the past. But I'll tell you what, when you experience direct technological energy pain, that is very different to some of the almost what you would consider natural pain. I can't explain it because you just have to feel it. But you know when something is coming from almost inside your body as opposed to coming from outside and into your body. Did I put that right? There is a big difference. In fact, sometimes the difference is unbelievable. But you know the old saying, if you've got to walk in someone else's shoes. Well, most people are not only not walking in... No one can really walk in your shoes. No one can feel your pain. But either way, if you're dealing with people around who only feel, who are not even interested, like a real human being does tend to be a little bit sympathetic if they see someone else suffering because they relate it to themselves and say, hey, I couldn't stand that. I know that myself, and yet I don't consider myself a very compassionate person. But I can almost feel a bit ill if I hear that someone else... Not because I even know that person, I'm just like, that's awful. But the psychopathic person will actually tell you that. And you can see that they have no feeling about it whatsoever. They don't even relate it to themselves. I find that strange because it's almost selfish to relate it to yourself, but they don't even do that. They're like, I am separate from every other person. And they don't relate it to themselves at all. And that is very unnatural in a way. Because obviously some people might feel some people's pain more than others. I get that. Some people are more sensitive. But even if you weren't, you just kind of would just mentally say, oh, that's all. I don't quite get that. But they don't... It's almost as though it doesn't exist, because I've actually seen them when they tell me these things. Like if someone, and they actually seem to enjoy talking about other people's illnesses too. That's another point too. I know that I can't stand going near a hospital, never have since I was a child, because I always felt that hospitals were like a negative place. I'm not wrong there either, but just because I didn't want to, even though I didn't know the people in the hospital, I just didn't want to be around all that kind of illness. It just it brought me down. But it doesn't bring psychopaths down at all. because they're like, it doesn't bring them down because they're like, I don't quite get it, but they, in fact, it almost can elevate them because they can almost, well, actually enjoy other people's suffering almost, I suppose you could say, really. I suppose that's probably it. And they never think that it could happen to them, which is kind of strange in a way. But anyway, I've gone off track. I lost that plot. I actually don't think I can go outside, and I don't think I can actually just go outside the door to get the planes or to see if a car's pulling up. That was the purpose of the video, and I've rambled too long. But I'm just exhausted here now and sweated right through. I have to say that, and I'm not saying that for sympathy. It's just a reality, and but I'm saying that that's the matrix for you. That's when you're surrounded by negative people. You're surrounded by a system, and if you are encountering the same, look, even if you're not, you are still surrounded. If you're a real human being, you are, because there were in limited numbers, and it is the end game scenario. More or less. Well, it's happening anyway. Even if it wasn't the end, these things are happening around people, and there are less real people around. That's why I say I see them. I've now realised that they've been systematically moved out of even around where I am. Even low, I actually was antisocial, so I wouldn't have known if there were humans. But because I know that now, they've moved them out beforehand. Because if I knew there were real people around now, I probably would be trying to get them on side or get some sort of support or at least form a connection. Because you have to. Because you can't be on your own and antisocial at this time, even though you are actually on your own, because all the real people have been systematically moved out of Henry Street and Leichhardt. Or, if not, there's been so many others brought in, or so many others around patrolling and watching and controlling the few that are, that you're not going to access them. And, like you might say, well, does it matter? Well, it does matter, because that means that you are at the mercy of rather large numbers of people who are negatively affecting your body and your mind and as we said, the spirit really as well, because that will eventually be affected. Some people will be able, if you to endure more physical problems, and I have to admit I'm not one of those, and because their spirit is higher. Because I think all these things are connected. While you're here, all these things are connected. The human body shouldn't be at its lowest level because that affects your mood. If your body is feeling really bad, and also if you are in fear that it's going to be made worse because of what's around you. Now, I'm finishing up the video here, but I'm going to make this final point. And it may or may not be valid, and I was laughed at. I mentioned the foil, okay, in the last video, was it the last video? Or video, where right when the Matrix first opened up, I became aware, as that gentleman said to me, you are pointing your mobile phone at me, sending microwave frequencies at me. That took me by surprise, because that is really reversing things around, because I'm only standing there with the mobile in my hand, as most people do, and I'm not intentionally pointing it at them. But there was an implication there, even though I'm sure it didn't come out in the video, because these people were talking really low. I think they knew that the video was still going. But either way, but maybe they didn't. Maybe they weren't sure, because they knew when they come out, because they immediately said, oh, there's a conspiracy, do you think, with those two girls down there? Now, what sort of person comes up, a neighbour, and says, because they see two people in the distance, like a couple of houses down, unless they know there is some sort of something going on, would point that out, because it wasn't like the Matrix was full on at that time. There wasn't cars pulling in there. And either way, these people don't notice that there's extra cars or that, because those cars are their cars. They know the people in those cars. They also are combining with those people with their cars. The cars that go up and down my side, they are the same people. They are my neighbours down the back. They are in conjunction with the ones on the street, down Henry Street, that are pulling in and out across the road. All these people that pretend. And you notice how that fella across the road said, oh, they're not too friendly. He's implying that most of the people on the street don't like him. He is friends. He knows them all. He's part of the Matrix. He means that they're not too friendly to me. That is just making fun of me. Because he knows that no one is really friendly with me, despite appearances. I'm just putting it bluntly here. But also it's just this business of plausibly acting out a scenario that is not true, where they are then in the clear, as if to say, well, look, we are not really friends with everyone on the street. We have our own friends, but we're not friends with... Whereas it is a community joint system of Matrix people, and they are all Matrix people. I observe them and I see enough to say they are. Even the few that I thought were exceptions, where I thought maybe the husband is or the wife isn't, but they're in a family situation where they're the human that thinks that everything's normal, and they don't know that, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, you could be in a family or married to someone who is of the Matrix. But you don't know that. Oh, the example of the fella that I have known for 30 odd years, or knew 30 odd years ago, and have at times not spoken to him for long periods when I woke up, but now speak occasionally, because I thought maybe I'm meant to even tell people that I know are not really my friends and that have done irreversible damage in my life. And my mistake for keeping company, yes, because you don't know and you don't realise, but you should take the hints, because you do see things and you let it go. But if you really knew that they were psychopathic narcissists, which you didn't know, you would drop them like hot cakes, of course. Or at least you would be in their life. If you were in their life, you would know not to believe them, not to trust them too much. That's what when the Matrix come down on me, I said, I realise now that 3/4 of people around are psychopaths. But that's fine with that, because I know that. So I will just deal with them like I do. I'll be friendly. I can even interact with them, because you'll have to, because there's so many of them. But I won't let them control me. That is not possible, though. Not if they are in a whole system, and there's not just one you're talking about. That's right, whereas you say there's just one narcissist that's in your life. You think, I won't let that person control me. I'm aware of that now, so I will stand my ground on things if I have to. Whereas in the past, you'd succumb, or you'd melt. You wouldn't. I'm trying to use the right words, because you'd think, oh, it's better to keep the peace. Oh, it's not that big of an issue. Whereas you wouldn't let them rule you like you have, or like I have. And so you can still, I'm not saying you should choose to interact with them, but maybe, like if they're relatives or people you've known, it's impossible not to. But also you do think that maybe if they understood that they are really being controlled by a matrix and a matrix god, because most of them don't, you think maybe they might actually perhaps stop being a psychopath. Is that possible? Can they let go of the possession? Can they say, hey, well, probably not, because it's probably, but most of them might not even believe that. But if they did believe it, would it turn their mind around? Because that's what you as a human think, because it's turned your mind around. Because I know that now that I know that I'm in this matrix that is controlled by a God entity and its minions and stuff, I've had to change my own actions, or the way I think about people and how I deal with things. And you become a lot more compassionate than what you were before. whereas before you might not have been really negative, but you were probably still, more realistic and a little bit harder to where you're like, oh, I don't need this and I don't need that. I'll get by. I've got you think you've got a safe system around you. That's right. You think if I get sick, I'll go to the hospital. I'll go to the medical centre. You don't think that if you go to the hospital or the medical centre that you're going to come back with things that you didn't intend and that they're not really there to benefit you, maybe. You get some test or something and then they say, oh, and it's all a waste of time a lot of the time. But, maybe, I'm not going to go into that, but, you could come back with more than what you went with, because, I'm going to leave that because that's becoming a bit too intense, that side of it. But, there's many ways to look at how people can read your mind, know your thinking, see what you see, all this sort of stuff, which they do. Even all around you knows more about what you do. You don't know what they're all doing, but they know what you're doing. They don't, in order to always randomly appear, that means that they know when you're coming out. That's if it's a matrix. If it's not a matrix, then it's all just remarkable coincidence. Oh, my hand is very sore there, strangely enough. Goodness gracious. But where was I? Yeah, but like this gentleman, this is just an example. It's very personal, but at the same time, I'm just using it as an example of projection. Not that long ago when I spoke to this person, a few months ago, right, on the telephone. Mainly only see this person on the telephone. But telephone's reasonably safe, but you can even end up with, psychopaths can even affect you even on a telephone because their words, particularly if you allow them to, if you feel you've got something to lose. Whereas if you, that's right, take it very lightly and say, I really don't care, which is how you should be, because you're really dealing with people that don't care too. They're just playing, just as all these people are. Everything they say is just made up. They don't believe what they're saying. My father used to always say, some people believe their own lies. He used to say that over and over again. What did he mean? How did he know that? That's not something I would have ever said. Yes, because psychopathic, narcissistic people do believe their own lies. They feel justified in lying and in saying whatever they want to say. And sometimes they actually, in their own mind, I think they get so convoluted, they do actually almost believe it. So they don't actually think that they're play acting. Because they're mainly about presenting, you have to look into all that psychology of all that sort of stuff. It's not for me to be a psychologist, but I do understand it, only because I've encountered it and I have looked into it, of course, in recent times. But I started to realize, there's the plane going over. I should be out there getting the planes, and instead I've done my usual long video that I haven't done for a while, sitting at the table. But this fella, right? I'm sure most people would be sound asleep by now. Actually, it is night time anyway. But this fella, that really has caused havoc in my life. And some of it's my own fault, because if you keep the company of people when you should know better, because even if you think someone is a friend or likes you, and you might have a need for that at a particular time, because the matrix brings you, this is how it happened to me, the matrix brought me down to where I was very, felt that I was very depressed and could not handle all the narcissistic, psychopathic people around me, mainly family at the time, right? And they really got on top of me. So then if you have an outsider person that comes along that befriends you, and you've never even had a friend or whatever, and you don't know that they also are psychopathic narcissist and that they come from a family like that too, you don't even know that. I know that now. But you start at some point to see that they do want it a bit their own way. After a while, after they've befriended you and sympathised with you and been this so-called compassionate friend, when they don't really, they just listen to what they usually, that's right, I've been told this, and this is true because this is what's happened to me, I can remember, that you tell them all your business, you tell them all your feelings, all your emotions and all your heartaches and all the trouble you're going through and why you're depressed and why you know, are on the verge of this or that, you know, and they empathise and they relate and they will, you know, agree with your, you know, your complaints and things to a point, up to a point, to then when you realise at some point that they have taken over and that they're a little bit more dominating and not as easygoing. This person actually used to say to me, oh, whenever I'd say, what do you want to do? They'd always be like, whatever you like, I'm easy both ways. You want this? Oh, I don't care. And then after they have got you sucked in, you realise that they're not easygoing at all, that those same things that they said, oh yeah, I'm easy, if you want to do this, I'll do that. Then after they've sucked you in, then it's like, no, you want to do that? No, you can't do that. That's not good for you. That's not right. No, I don't agree with that. That's not the way things are done. And you accept it because they rationalise it and make it seem plausible, but then there's a lot more of that as time goes on. So basically they're not the easygoing because they know that you're the easygoing one. They know that you're the one who is reasonable, that wants to pretty much just fit in with everyone, because even I was always a bit like that. I was never really that difficult. I'm relatively easygoing. I'm like, you know, whatever you decide, as long as everyone agrees. Unless it was something real strong point, I probably wouldn't object. I'd say it's better to, you know, cooperate a bit type of thing, you know, without big noting myself. Because like I say, that's, if you see that a psychopathic person gets you to do something that you wouldn't normally do and that you should see as negative, but because of your emotional dependency at the time, because you become dependent on these people, even though they are really not a very good support. In reality, they're more active than you. Like if you can't do, like you might think better than them and know what's going on more, as I was, but they can do more. Things that you should be able to do that you allow yourself to become fearful of doing, they'll do it for you. So then you become dependent. But they're things that you should be able to do yourself because you actually know more than them in some ways. That's the joke of this reality with human beings and the psychopathic people that rule my reality and this world, really, if you want to look at it that way, because they're everywhere. But either way, just finish up here. Oh. I can't believe that I'm so over the top, to be honest. I actually think it's important, and yet I know that it's really just making myself important in a way, because, but it is sharing what your life experience has been. It may or may not benefit some people. It may just collaborate what you already know, and some people are happy with that because they're like, hey, I experienced that too, because you will get that from a psychopath. But they won't mean it. I've had that. That's what I'm saying. I've known some people for a long time. And they sympathise. But while they are sympathising with you being upset, they actually enjoy the energy of you being upset. They are sapping you. They are actually getting energy from that. They enjoy it. They're not sorry. When you're upset, they're not crying with you. No, they're actually laughing at you. That was something that I found very tragic and very devastating when I realised that. And it made me angry too. It makes you angry. It makes you feel that you've been made a fool of and that you've been used and that you've been stupid. You know that you shouldn't have done some wrong things anyway, or things that you wouldn't have normally done. You went with actions and things that you normally wouldn't do because you have thought that you had a friend or someone you could trust. that would be a support. Of course, they're a trust while you are doing what they want you to do. You know, like if you turn against a family member, even if they also are a psychopath, but you normally wouldn't, because the psychopath tells you that I'm your support now, because they want to separate you from other people. Isolation, like is the case with the Matrix. Isolate human beings from the few other human beings so that they have no support. See, that's how I see it. It's about support. I've never needed support a great deal, or at least I thought I didn't. Before the Matrix, I'd finally got to that point to where I'm like, oh yeah, like if I get sick, I can go to the medical centre. I don't have to be totally dependent on people quite as much, not as much as what I was in the past. But I'm not making sense here. I'm so sorry that I'm not very clear in these things. In fact, it's all just becoming more emotional and convoluted. But I'm trying to make a few points anyway. But you can get wrapped up in yourself. But I only do it for the video, because the rest of the time the Matrix is wrapping me up and making me emotional the way they want. I'm not supposed to be complaining about. But really, I'm saying the Matrix has always been around people, so it's always been around me too. So Matrix people, or even psychopaths, even if they're not consciously part of the Matrix, they're working indirectly for the Matrix, because psychopathic people bring real human beings down. They don't allow them to be themselves. That's what you do realise at some point when you have friends that are psychopaths. They at first indicate that they want you to be yourself, and that they like your emotions, they like your complaints, they listen, they sympathise. But then at another point, as time goes on, you realise that they don't want you to be yourself. They want you to be just for them. They actually end up limiting you from being what you just are. Even if you're not doing much at all, you do feel that at some point. That's when you start to realise you're in a relationship, or with friends or people that are a bit controlling, and that actually, even if they don't mean to, they are actually limiting you. Even in little ways. That was something that I realised. They will just limit you in little ways, in ways that you even had before the relationship with them, when you befriended them, so that you could be more yourself, to get away from, say, your narcissistic psychopathic family who were restricting you. So it becomes a very, that was my circumstance. So it was a real joke. The old saying, from the frying pan into the fire, almost like, and you don't realise that. You think you're going from the frying pan into, water, where you will be, where you've got someone that actually enjoys your company and likes you being what you are, but they actually don't. That's the strange thing. It takes a while to, but either way, you realise at some point they also are limiting, just as maybe your family were limiting or something. You know what I'm saying? And it's subtle though, because they don't expose that till after you've become dependent on them. Because if you needed a friend, or you didn't have a friend before, and then you become dependent, they've got you trapped in a way. If you were really strong or really yourself, you would be able to realise that and just walk away, probably, or at least get out of their clutches a bit, or at least stand your ground more, whatever. But I don't think I've explained this, and I've done a psychological video now on psychopaths. But either way, I just get back to the point that I was going to make. It's personal, and I can't believe that I'm doing this. So I must really believe that it is the end of things, and that there's so little to lose, because I'm not the sort of person that would make a video and express all this personal stuff. It's not only embarrassing, it's difficult, and I don't think it puts you in a good light. Some people say, no, she thinks she's important. This is what psychopathic people say. She thinks she's important because she's talking on a video. She might get someone to listen. That's how they look at it. And look, there is truth to that. But it really No, I still don't find talking to people that I actually don't know, have never met, probably on the other side of the world, and telling innermost secrets. That is something that you would do with the psychopathic friend or husband or wife or who you choose to marry or something like that you think is your trusting soulmate, so-called soulmate. You know, we have the saying soulmate for life. That's the sort of information you would only give to your best friend or your soulmate. You wouldn't do it, broadcast it to people you don't know, not unless you were incredibly desperate and you are surrounded by a matrix. That's what it's come to, and I have to say that. That's the truth. That is the bottom line. This could be my last video if I exert this much energy, because don't forget I'm feeding the matrix with energy and its minions while I make this video. So while it may be a slight support or slight, maybe, what's the word? Not reassurance, but kind of validates what you already know, what you've experienced maybe, or maybe what you might experience in the future, because the matrix is always there. It may not have opened up for everyone and come right down like it has on some of us, but it will probably at some point. But it's still there controlling you even now. It's just that it's like me in the past. It's more subtle and you don't know it. And you don't even know you are surrounded by so many negative people that don't really want you to be yourself or progress in any way in this world, whatever it is you want to do, even if it's only simple things. You know, you'll probably be hindered in some way unless it suits them. Whereas most normal people would be like, it doesn't hurt me if you go down to the shops, it doesn't affect me, go. But, you know, to the matrix, it's like, no, we don't want that. No, we don't do that. And if she's doing it and we do it, then it makes us less important. So it's best that she doesn't do it, because then we can do it. And so therefore then we are emulating what she does or what a person does. And so therefore we have the limelight, or we are a real person. We are masquerading in this reality as real. And we can then suck in and draw in real humans and control them and get their energy and their ideas and that cycle. That's how they live. That's how they live, I think. It's like, you know, I've had it here for years, and why wouldn't I when I'm surrounded by negative people? You know, then they want to go. But they don't want to go. They're happy with their spider's webs that they've got around here. They're happy with their own kind. You know, they only want real people if they can suppress them and control them, you know, so that way they makes them happy, I guess. You know, it's their life. And like I say, it's a system. So it's their occupation, as I've said before. It's actually their existence. They don't know how to live any other way, and they're happy to live that way. They like it. They don't want to go away and be on their own like me and get away from a matrix. They are happy to be part of a matrix. They love the community of the matrix. They love the control. They love the power. You know, and they don't like you, so they feed off your suffering to a large extent, because they suffer too, and they're like, hey, we can't have other people that aren't suffering. Makes them feel even more suffering then. Whereas if they're surrounded with real people suffering, they've got control of things and they feel at home. That's how I look at it. I heard this expressed with other people. I've heard other people say this, and as putting it very simply, you know, if it makes sense. I don't know if I put it as well as some people. You know, some video, even though some of the videos, most of the videos that you listen to will be of the Matrix, by Matrix demigods or Matrix so-called human people, but they are really of the Matrix. They are really more technical. every bit of information they get is kind of given to them and download. They're not like me just making, I'm not making it up, but I'm kind of making it up. I piece it together from things, but I'm not, I don't have a script. I haven't been told anything beforehand from another source, which is like all these Matrix people that make videos. Demigods. But not all the demigods are like the big ones that you see on the world stage. You can have lower demigods. But they're still working for the Matrix. They're not real human beings who are just expressing their own experience. And some of them are actually psychopathic narcissists that are telling you how to avoid and how to deal with psychopathic narcissists. That's how it is. That's mostly what it is. But you can still get correct information from them. But you mustn't relate to them, is what I'm saying. You should only relate to a real human being, if you are a real human being. If you're of the Matrix, you stick with the Matrix one. That's how it really is. The problem is as we well know, that the real human beings, because when you become like me, aware of all this, as that person said to me when they were going past, I think it even come out on the video, suspicious. In other words, does she think that we're suspicious? Well, of course they know I do. Because they are suspicious. Because they're not just randomly walking past. They're part of the Matrix. They're told to walk past. It's their life to walk past. They'll probably get a prize when they go round the corner for walking past. If you want to look at it that way. Who wouldn't? A lot of people would say, what's the harm in it? They don't care if it drives people around the twist, because they probably think, why should it drive around the twist? We're just walking past. So even if we're doing something that's negative, that's not really hurting her that much. But then again, they don't know that other people are doing other things. They don't know that it's a whole systematic suppression of a human being. It's not just one thing. It's a lot of things. And some things are actually doing quite a lot of physical harm and mental harm and psychological harm, emotional harm, all the same thing, I suppose, really, to where you just can't hardly breathe or live at all. And if you didn't know that that was the purpose, you actually don't want to, but you have to think that there's a bigger picture, which there is, because there's a bigger picture, because there's a Matrix and Matrix God. But even so, it's still difficult at a personal level. Sometimes you say, I don't care about the Matrix or the Matrix God or what's going on in the world or this Matrix. It can do whatever it wants. I've had it. That's basically how a lot of real human beings probably would think. I know that's how I think. And so you do have to have some sort of, and that's why it is better if you are a little bit more spiritual, to where you can, and to where you have some basis of knowing what the real reality is. Even I don't have the full picture of the real reality. I know there is, and I know that it's, that, you're not meant to, I feel that you're not meant to succumb to the Matrix. But, how do you ignore the Matrix? That's the problem. Obviously some people, this was pointed out to me, someone left the comment, turn on some loud music when they're turning up the negative frequency around you. That's a good practical thing to do. And so then they say, so then people get annoyed if you say, I don't want to do that, or I can't do that. But you can do some practical things. But let me just say this, and I'm going to make myself look bad here and pathetical, but it's true. I could point the mobile phone just over there and show, for instance, when the Matrix, I did, when you realise the Matrix is even physically causing you problems, You get information to where there are things that you can do that might offer you a bit of protection or a little bit of help, to try to even maintain to where you can just go on a bit longer even. So I've got like a over there. You probably saw it when I did the cat video. It's not real big. It didn't cost a real lot, but it was a bit of an effort putting it there and getting it. It's a water filter, where you filter the water. So because I had been told, and I wasn't aware of this, only 2 years ago or something, or a bit more, that the fluoride in the water is no really good for your body. So I thought, oh, well, in that case, yeah, because I knew that I was being suppressed in so many ways physically. In the past, even if I'd have been told that, I said, oh, well, yeah, problem. Even if it isn't that much, my body can fight it off because I'm fit in other ways and I don't have a negative matrix suppressing my whole body. So I think I can take a bit of fluoride and it won't actually cause me too much trouble, and that may well even be the case. But it's not the case because you do have a matrix suppressing your whole body. So, I think I'm about to collapse. I'm a fast talker and yet I should be talking slow and careful. It's really not that important, is it? That's right, the matrix. I think it's so important to say these few things and yet it's expanding energy. I'm sweating right through here. So the matrix has me, and the Archon God, which is like the matrix God entity and all its minions and all its others, whatever they are, because there's many gods there amongst them. Probably one supreme God maybe, but many of the so-called demigods, even the ones we see and those we don't see, But either way, I got that water filter, and I used it for a month to make the tea and coffee. And I was fine with it. I haven't used it since, and it's been there for about 1.5 years, 2 years now. I only used it for a month or so because I just can't be bothered. I'm like, I just don't care. See, that's how the matrix wins. Even with something like that, when you try to do something, that's right. So you do get like that, and that's just an example. Sitting there, not using it, because it does take a little bit of extra effort. You've got to put the water into the jug and wait a bit. But I was doing it, and you can do it. But because your energy is being drained by this matrix, something will happen. You might be having to deal with all the things you're dealing with. You'd say, well, she spends the time making the video. Well, yes, because I think that it's an outlet for me. I actually making this video is a release because I think that I'm getting some sympathy. It's true. Or some understanding. I've lost the point of where I think that I'm going to change the world and I'm going to talk to people and they're all of a sudden going to be matrix people or people that are in the dark and all of a sudden see the light and the world will change and the vibration will rise. No, I don't think that anymore. Because I know that a lot of the people, just from the bit of feedback I get, which is not much, most of the people that listen already know about the matrix or at least think that is so. And even if you think it's a strong possibility, you're probably in that right direction. But I'm not 100% sure of everyone, obviously, because I don't really know. But most of you would be asleep by now anyway with this thing. And actually, I'm not very relaxing when I get hyped up like this. So actually, I don't think I'd listen to myself. Whereas even if someone talks and just gives information, even if you already know it, and it's kind of relaxing to listen to. I think someone said it's relaxing to listen. Well, I don't know how anyone could find me relaxing to listen to, not when I know myself I'm sitting here and, almost having, I wouldn't say I'm having a breakdown, no, but you're so hyped up and you're sweating right through while you're just talking. And it's not like I'm stressed. It's as though you think it's so terribly important to say things that actually aren't. But either way, I've just finish up here. Yeah, I don't use it because the matrix gets on top so much to where I can't be bothered. Or I just don't have the time, even though I've really got time. But always something is popping up. You're always being distracted. You're always being annoyed. You're so angry that you don't care because if you're hearing all these things, that's right, you really need to get on top and have a total system set in place with support to where you can protect yourself and be a bit more relaxed despite what goes on around you. And even if you had people that agreed with you or understood, see, if you're dealing with matrix people and people that are only poking fun at you, really, even if they agree with you, because if they're part of it and they're saying, oh yeah, I think there could be some microwave frequencies going on around here, and and they're actually sending them or part of them, and know they're going into houses or your house. They wouldn't even know that unless they knew. But it's just making fun, really, in a way, and that is more upsetting. If anything, they'd be better, or maybe they're like, I don't know. You try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but that's when you are playing for the matrix too, because then the matrix is just they're just whooping it up and laughing, really, when you do that. I would say, honestly, because in this reality now, you really do have to take a stand and say, oh, where do I stand in this matrix? You can't really sit on the fence anymore. If you think you can, you're really not, because if you are playing for the matrix, but then you're falsely befriending people that you are, really stabbing in the back, shall we say? That's just protecting. They're just protecting themselves by doing that. They don't really ever want to be on your side. I would say they're just they're just doubly covering. I would think. I could be wrong, but that's because I'm a silly human being who's trusting and thinks that there's some reason that they would do that. That they, like I say, if you're a hitman, even if you said, oh, I didn't mind, I had a good conversation with that person before I killed them, they weren't such a bad person, I still kill them. Like I say, it's just that we just don't understand that, because I know if I like something, you just can't do that. It's just normal that you wouldn't want to, and you probably couldn't. But either way, just fold up on this final point, which has taken me ages to get to. This person that I had known for years and years and years, when I spoke to them on the telephone many a month ago, this is projection. This was someone that I knew really well for a period of time and trusted greatly, and they allowed me to do a lot of negative things, or let me, or should I say that, when I was in their company, I went along with all their negative ideas eventually, because if you think you've got someone that cares about you and sympathises with you and is on your side to make you a freer, more individual person, like in other words, if they say, oh yeah, someone else is suppressing you, when really they just want to suppress you as well. That's the joke of it. They're like, we will help you to get away from the suppression of, say, your family, or if you're in whatever the situation is, you know what I mean? They've got no intentions of helping you. But either way, you gradually realise that as time goes on. But what I am saying, this person, and this was like 30 years ago when I first knew this person, and I spoke to them a few months ago. This is an example of a classic covert psychopathic narcissistic personality disordered person, and they are very disordered. This person's disordered in more ways than one. Like, I'm untidy and whatever, but this person's place, I remember they hoard up to the roof, so they're even worse than me at that level. And I'm dirty, but I'm only dirty because of the dog. I don't really like to be dirty. Like, I'll go and have a shower, I'm sweating through here now, and but either way, this person said to me, this is just, I'm so sorry that I waste so much of the time. They said to me, 30 years. And they said to me a few months ago when I was speaking on the telephone, when I thought I will try to help this person again, at least tell them about some of the things that are going on in the world, so that they are not playing for the matrix God entity. Because even this person, even though they're a psychopath and working against me and every other human being that they know, because I've seen this with examples of every person that gets involved with them, setting up situations where people are, playing one against the other. That playing one against the other, which is what psychopathic people do and matrix people do, and the matrix itself sets up playing one against the other, to where you you think that one person is your friend and they'll say that person isn't, but really they're all friends, they're all combining, but they don't let you know really what's going on. In other words, they're setting that's the matrix. That was just the example of the neighbourhood thing that I was trying to show by even those neighbours, that some people that are friends with someone, and then because they know that you don't know someone's name, because I mentioned this to Sean too, remember? He said to me, do you know your neighbour's name? And I said, no, I don't. I think it starts with M, but I don't. So they're throwing that up because they know everything that's going on. They know every conversation you have. They know people I'm talking to here on the video and all the people. And, they know that. So they want to be innocent and in the clear, more or less. I'm being very naughty here, I know, but I'm just calling it for what it is, as a matrix. Okay, so matrix people, some of them can't help it. If you're a psychopath, can you help it? If you become possessed, I would say, do you enjoy the possession? Do you enjoy? I don't enjoy these possessed animals. No way. Okay, so I like that big boy cat. But I want my real big boy cat back, the original unpossessed animal. The only reason I like the possessed one is because it acts so similar to my original big boy cat. And without that, I'm living in a matrix surrounded by negative people that I know. The cat is the least negative. It's delusional, but it's almost as though it's my only grip on keeping a sanity or a bit of reality, because it's still something that reminds me of the original big boy cat, so there's something pleasant there, even though I know it is not. It is a possessed animal. I know that for a fact. I also am operating just a wee bit under cognitive dissonance and an illusion and delusion to do that, just to keep some pleasantness, even though I know it's a fantasy. It's a real fantasy doing that, but I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it, but how far, we haven't got a lot left in at this time when we're isolated and in this end thing. Cut off from anything that is real or of the same nature, or even remotely of the same nature, because we're all very matrix. We've all been matrix conditioned, and so therefore there's a little bit of empathy even with the matrix ones, even though they are so far removed from what you really find acceptable now, which is strange. But either way, this gentleman that I had known for 30 years, when I was speaking to him a few months ago on the telephone, out of the blue, he got quite angry and uppity, even though I was conversing, very carefully with him, trying to bit ridiculous that you, in a way, that you actually, but in a way, because it's the end of things, perhaps I'm trying too hard to be spiritual when I'm really not spiritual. I'm almost like, like I should be, like I tell all these people around here. I've exposed myself in some ways, because I have mentioned various things to people. Even that gentleman that come up, he knows that a few years ago, when the Matrix first opened up, I did express my objection to the technology and the fears about the technology around, the Wi-Fi, the mobiles, and the planes going over. He mentioned the fuel and the noise, which certainly I agree. But I also pointed out other things. But he's conveniently forgot that, but he hasn't forgot it. He was hoping that he was half sympathising or covering for the Matrix by saying, yes, the planes are... Remember how he said the word poison? The planes are poison. Because he knows I know that they are. But he said it's because of the fuel that comes out of them. Well, no, I don't know, but whichever way you look at it, yes, it is poison what you breathe in when they come over with the big jets, quite continual, particularly over my place too. So there again, I'm probably copping it more than most people. They do like to see how resilient we can be. And I think there is a limit though. In fact, that's why I've come, great admiration for something that I didn't realise, which is why I went along a certain line with the videos, that the human being is everything, because the amount of opposition and suppression that is put against human beings, to me, just opened my eyes up to why would that be? Why do they need to do so much? And even with myself, I'm like, I can't understand why I'm still here. Because I thought, hey, if all the information I get and what I know to be true, because I see it with my own eyes and I'm experiencing it, I'm like, I'm actually still here. So it takes a lot to completely suppress a human being. And I'm like, why do they have to go to those lengths? There is no lengths that this matrix won't go to, as the song goes. There are no lengths that we won't go to. The Distance in Your Eyes, the song Losing My Religion. Have a listen if you're interested in listening to the music. You may already know it. I know lengths that I won't go to. The Distance in Your Eyes. See, those are psychopathic, technologically controlled demigods singing it. And they know that the human being is really above them. But they, in this reality, are above the human being. They suppress the human being and they take all the goodies from the human being, and then they are the superior demigod. That is the reality, and that song clearly tells you that if you listen carefully to the lyrics. And I could go... I'll have to leave that song for another video, which I've been meaning to do, but as you can see, never get round to it because I haven't got time enough, because that song does, but it does openly tell you how they feel, how the Matrix people and the Matrix God entity and all its millions and beings and relatives and followers and worshippers and all whatever it is really think about a human being. The way that they almost need the human being, even though their goal is to suppress and get rid of human beings. It's like the psychopath or the narcissist. They have a need for something they don't want, something they don't like, and that makes them even more angry. Because they're like, we don't like that, but we need it. Can you imagine, like, having to endure the company of someone like myself? When you don't really like me, as they don't, none of them do. None of the psychopathic narcissists like human beings or me, but they endure my company, and they even go out of their way to befriend me or to lure me into their web or into their reality. Because they need me. And they hate needing something that they actually don't like. I get that. I would hate to need something that I didn't like, that I have to have round me all the time when I can't stand it. But it still gives me something that I need. It gives me, it gives you life. It gives you life because, or makes you feel important to suppress that person, but you actually don't want to do that. You can't stand it because you're like, hey, I shouldn't need this. I should just be important in my own person. But they don't. It's like that. It's needing something that you don't want and don't really like, but you need it. You can't stand it, but you need it. A bit like when you're addicted to something, you have a need for it. But it's not. It's something is, well, that's not quite the same. Well, I think I got that one muddled up. That doesn't make quite sense, not a good example. But either way, this person said to me, after 30 years, a few months ago, in the middle of a pleasant conversation, said, I finally figured out about you. I've known you for 30 years, and for 30 years, this is what he said to me, for 30 years, the real truth is, right from the very beginning, right from the very moment that you met me, you just conned me. You're just a con artist. You never really liked me. You're a con artist. You never really liked me. So for 30 years, and even from the beginning, you just never liked me and you conned me. I couldn't believe that. I was like, that's the truth. I was conned for many a year, and you never really liked me. And I thought, why would you put all that effort in? Why would you bother to befriend someone that you really never liked? All under the pretext or the idea and what your words say, that you actually needed some company and that you liked my company and that you liked me, whereas you really never did. That's right. Yeah, that's interesting. And I thought, wow, to say, because it was so out of context too, because if you're getting on with someone, like it was just like, it was reversing it round and telling you straight, which I already knew. I figured that out many years ago. But I didn't put it quite that extreme. I wouldn't have even took it that extreme. I would have said, maybe originally you liked me a little bit, maybe even a bit more, but maybe you just got, you found my company a bit too overwhelming at some point, or maybe you got a bit funny because that psychopathic people do like to be number one. They don't like it if you, if you overstep them in any way. If they think they're a genius and they're the most intelligent person, and then, like myself, you start rambling on and they say, hey, she's making a bit more sense than me. They can actually get quite nasty and jealous inside. And I thought maybe, and also if you're a little bit more, a bit like if you had a relationship, for instance, and the relationship cooled, and originally you were quite affectionate and you had a loving relationship, but then, it cooled off to where it got more just friendly, that sort of thing. That can happen in relationships. And then that person uses that because they never really even liked your affection. Like if you held someone's hand, they pretend they like that, but they're just getting your energy. Whereas you like that, you had that need, that physical comfort or that physical proximity. Maybe that's just an example. I'm not saying this is the case with me because as you can see, but I can relate to other people and I know what is meant to be normal too. And I know what I probably would have liked if I had been living and been allowed to be a real human being in a real world and not been so, mixed up by this matrix and even by matrix people around you, whether they be family, friends, husbands, wives, whatever they are, it doesn't matter, but yeah, that person then, even this person, I remember at some point sort of, they start to use what you think are rational reasons why they have cooled towards you, or why they have changed, or why they no longer respect you so much and don't, or various reasons, and you will actually buy into it because they always have to present the reality that they're the genuine one and you're not. That's right. They're the con artist. As this person said to me, you're just a con artist. You never really liked me. And I'm like, well, hey, okay, so I have deserted you over the years as a friend because I woke up. but I did originally like you. How could you possibly say that? I mean, that's because that's what they thought, because they knew it right from the word that they never really liked you, never really liked me. So they twist it round. Projection. Reverse, like this world where everything is reversed round. Everything that all these psychopathic, narcissistic people say to you is really the reverse often. And once you realise this, you can actually see it. Even the examples of talking to people around here, which I might have filmed, like I say, reverse a lot of that round. That's if you can even hear what some of them are saying, because obviously, but that happens all the time. They project what you are often, not what they are. They're the opposite to that. I might have woke up to that person and decided it was not healthy to keep their company so much, which I still think is true, because psychopathic people are not healthy to keep too much company with, especially if you don't know they're psychopathic. But certainly when you first meet people and you think that a psychopath is, you're lucky if there's one person in the entire world that is a psychopath. So you do take them at face value and like them and trust them. That's normal. So there's no way that why would you, if you wanted company, if you were a real person, want to con someone? What are you conning them even for? If you like someone, if two people appear to get on, who's conning what? I don't think I made sense there. But that was clearly what was said to me. And when I got off the telephone, I thought, gee, that's a bit much. That's the reality. And that's how, I suppose you kind of say, that's how foolish we are as human beings. And you do kick yourself and say, gee, to be fooled like that makes you then feel bad. And then they're reversing it round and saying, you're some cold-hearted con artist. It's amazing. But that's the Matrix. That's the Matrix people. That is how they operate. That is how this world operates. That's how the Matrix God entity thinks and controls this reality. It is unbelievable in a way, if you're a real person, but you believe it once you see it and you know it's true. But it's still very hard to accept and to grasp and to realise it really is. But if you don't, you will be conned by the con artists of the Matrix, who will con you with no qualms at all. And they will con you for reasons that you will find implausible and unbelievable. You will say, why would someone go to all that bother to con someone that they don't like for very little even physical reward most of the time? But they just enjoy suppressing. That's what it comes down to, I think. And controlling. It's in their nature, they enjoy it. It's just how they live. I have seen this same person live an entire lifetime, conning and controlling one person after another, including myself, this same person. And then when everything goes sour, it's always the other person's fault. It's never their fault. They never did nothing, even though they conned someone they didn't like from the beginning. And then that person becomes the one where they will turn it around and say, oh, that person just conned me and never really liked me. He only wanted to use me. No, you've got nothing out of it. You've been sucked dry. You've went along with things that you shouldn't have and you knew you shouldn't have. You were tricked. And you are paying the price of it even now, because everything does come back. That's right. You waste your time with negative people that are conning you and don't like you. and that get you to even turn against others, or at least leave others, because you might be better off with one psychopath over another, if you know what I mean. That's how I looked at it now after 40 years. Like when I look over my life, I say, I was better off with my psychopathic parents than with some of these psychopathic friends. Because although they were, they certainly didn't like me too much, but they may not have been as destructive as the ones that I trusted that induced me to cut ties with them or to take a different path. That's how I look at it now. That's really poor hopes. And of course, if you knew that they were all psychopaths, you might be a bit more discerning and say, hey, I've got to try to find, like you do now, slim chance of finding any real human beings in amongst the reality that this is the end time scenario and that you have such a high population of psychopathic narcissistic people who are not only of that mindset but are part of communities that are all linked, that are all connected, where they're combining against human beings to not only suppress them but to isolate them from the potential. Like I say, if someone moves into your neighbourhood or they want to build a boarding house that might bring more people in, there's no lengths that this matrix, as the song goes, there are no lengths that I won't go to. The distance in your eye, there's too much distance between me and you. We are not you. There is distance in our eyes. You are different to us. You are not a psychopath. You will never be us. We want to control you. We want to bridge that distance. We want to use you. And there are no lengths that we won't go to, to stop you being a real human being in this reality, so that we keep our matrix system going. I don't think I put that right. I'm sorry about that. I don't think I put that well at all. I shouldn't have thrown the song in there. I was trying to be too fancy. I should do the song separately to where at least I can keep on track. But there, that's, I better fold up. I'm absolutely had it here. I'm happy to make the video, but I have had it, and it's late. I didn't go outside even, but I definitely do not. Even if I didn't put this video out, I do put most of the videos out actually. But like I said, I didn't intend to put that last one out because of that fella being across the road, and that confrontation was not meant to be part of the video. It just happened, and I thought that the phone had gone off when I went running across. It's actually quite, human beings are almost being degraded at a mental, not only at a physical level, but even at a psychological level or emotional level, when you carry on like that with people where you are, you're talking to, even if I thought I was talking to a real person, you're trying so hard to make them see, you shouldn't have to try that hard with just neighbours to say, hey, look, don't go against me, don't be part of making my life difficult, I'm not, it's just a joke to be actually play acting, because you're just play acting with actors that are, making ridiculous excuses. And they're ridiculous in the fact that they're not true. If they were true, it would be okay. But, where people just say, where they're just saying what they say to make their actions plausible, and to where you look bad and they look okay, as though they are normal people just doing normal things, when they know that everything they say is made up and is not the real picture that they are matrix control people, consciously working for the matrix, for their own benefit, you know, and yeah, I mean, that's what it really comes down to. And you see that at some point. It's taken me a while to see it even locally. Some people I've probably known for years and realise it. But, you know, you can't believe that so many people would be part of this collective. It's a collective. But in some ways, if you look at it another way, if you're not part of that collective, you will be isolated and you won't have many friends and you won't have any benefits, and you will see that people who aren't part of it their life will be difficult. So but more importantly, probably even if you're a real person, you would probably be told or made to believe that it wasn't such a bad thing to be part of these communities and these collectives. Even though these communities and collectives are controlled by the matrix and the matrix God entity, it's reality. That's the bigger, as my father said, that's the bigger picture, or the you know, and but most people might not even look beyond their own local community or their own city or whatever. But, you know, and they think that's enough. And maybe in some respects, without me being too philosophical and almost making myself too as though I'm, you know a fair bit more. And, you know, it's not for, you know, I say it's not for me to be making, I don't really want to be making opinions or even judgments on all these things. It's like that. But communities and justice, you know, all that is around me is making judgment. I'm not making judgment on anyone. But I am now, because they have made it on me and they're making it on human beings. You see, that's the way it really is. But I'm sure they reverse that round too, because it's a reversed world. A bit like that fella. Oh, so for 30 years, because he said, oh, if I really add it all up from the day I met you to now, even though there have been long periods in between where we've not been, and that was my choice, by the way, too. Not that it matters, but for 30 years, you know, you've conned me, and you never really ever liked me. That's the matrix. Oh, I better go. I've lost track of what I'm talking about. Thank you for your patience, anyone who's listened, because, like I say, that's, I don't know how anyone could listen to my whole video, to be honest. I know I wouldn't, but it's got it off my chest. These videos, even if no one listened at all, even if I'm just talking to a screen, which is what I used to do anyway, I actually realised that was a benefit, because I'm getting it off my chest, even though, of course, it doesn't change anything. And actually it doesn't benefit me greatly, because as I'm wet through here, perhaps I'm not really getting it off my chest. And but I used to think that, but maybe it's not actually working that way. But anyway, I better fold up. I shall try to get some matrix cars to show some sort of pattern. And if I do show some sort of pattern, the matrix says, do we care if she shows a pattern to a few people that may or may not already know this? They kind of do and kind of don't, you know. It just depends on how much control they really have, and whether it is terribly important to have absolute control. over every single human being. That's how I see it, because I really do sense sometimes that they still care a little bit, but not a real lot, because they really have got to that. If you've got most people part of communities and justice, if you know what I mean, even very like I said, the human being does have input into the reality. It has to be, otherwise why would you have astronomical numbers and all these communities against single individual human beings? That's how I come to my conclusion. It makes, talk about being plausible. That's the only thing that is plausible, because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense. I suppose some people could say, oh well, a bit like the Matrix, where they said it's a battery, that they might need certain resources. I've noticed that there's a lot of trucks that have resources on them that go past me, that synchronicity thing where it's thrown up at you. And what was the other one the other day that even come down here? What was it? Resources. Oh, they actually had a truck that went past and said battery. Well, see how I said battery? As if to say, you're just a battery, like in the Matrix. So I suppose there's that possible. In other words, like, we will use you until the battery is run dry, until the battery's dead, until the battery can no longer function, like a battery. That's interesting. See, so just at that level, whereas I do like to give human beings a little bit more positive note by saying that they still can, because although they are used as a battery, because that's what's happened, and that's what's just been happened over time, where the wool's been pulled over your eyes, as they say, to where you don't know what's happening. So you are used as a battery. And the difficult thing is that it's the end time, so that means that there's, even knowing that, you can't stop it that easily. But at the same time, if you had been able to, like I say, this mood thing, the fact that they're always, and this has been pointed out to me, but I know this myself, and I've known it for 3 years, like that. That's why I come to the frequency thing and agreed with that it's all, because that's all about a human mood. It does regulate this matrix somehow. Otherwise, they could, like I say, if the matrix has the power to control a human being, and even take resources from them, but don't really need to make their mood really miserable or really sad or really low. But they clearly do that as much as taking so-called resources, whatever you may think they will be, and use the battery, draining us. Still need to keep you unhappy almost. So yeah, like someone said, you've got to keep happy. The comment was left there, very good advice. Tried desperately to take it, but have to admit, I do find it very hard to find, even talk about happiness, not even to be happy, but to not be downright totally feeling negative, because even if you say, oh yeah, the human being has great importance, but you're still a human being, so you're on a daily basis still enduring this matrix, See, I'll turn this mobile off now, and if I go outside, actually because it's very late now, because it's getting late really, at night time, the matrix cannot, unless you actually go down the street or something, the matrix can't overstep its own rules and regulations or what is acceptable. But once a certain time, or of course they do make exceptions too, I have to admit that. And boy, have they had plenty of excuses and plenty of exceptions over the last few years. more things that would not be allowed or would not happen on such a continual basis, and that most people would object to and say, oh, I'm not going to put up with all that racket. But that's right, Matrix people around here, they don't care about the places being built, creating noise. That is not their reason for objecting to anything. Otherwise, they would object to all the other places that have been pulled down and built in the street, and the renovations going on, and the City West Link that went on for month after month after month, and all the road work and stuff that they've been doing just in one little street. Normal street people, or normal people living in a street, would find that intolerable if they were real people or not part of the Matrix. That is just a fact. If you were living here and saw it, and I tried to put a few things, but I've only started to this has been going on, and I have never even thought to put it on a video. And most of it doesn't come out as clear if it's inside the house. So you have to go out. Because although you can hear it in the house, this device doesn't pick up outside sounds, but your ears do, especially when you've been sensitised to sound. Because if you hear enough noise all the time, your ears are always looking for sound. I don't know how to explain that, but that's how I am, I know. You're aware of even little sounds become more pronounced. So you can imagine that the very loud, technological, aggressive, negative noises can be quite unbearable almost, especially if they really are loud. And believe you me, even to a person that wasn't sensitised to sound, some of that noise, that's why I mentioned it to neighbours, to get their reactions, just to show that they're Matrix people, even when they sympathise and say it's loud. But you notice most of them didn't. And also, why have they not mentioned that to me? If they were normal people, they would be complaining all the time about this noise to people. Because they have to live in the street. But instead it doesn't bother them. And I actually encountered this too, now that I think of it. An example, the same lady that was up here sitting, drinking coffee in front of me with her own portable chair, shall we say, there was a noise coming from down the back where her place is, and I actually went down there because I'm like, I'm sick of this. Where is this noise coming from today? Because I'm not one that confronts anyone. But I'll tell you what, when you get really fed up and you really cannot stand it and you think that it's causing you illness and injury, you really will, even a placid person like myself, and I'm pretty much a people-pleasing, placid person. I've even been told this over my life, and this is true. You can turn into a different person because you just push to the limit, and that's the fact. Well, I went down there when I heard this noise coming from down there, and I was actually timid too because I don't go down there very much. But I went down there, and she come to the door, and I said, and I said hello. So I said, oh, where's that noise coming from? Because they could hear it down there. It was coming from down there, and she was like, and it was quite loud. And she actually said to me, she said, oh, that's so-and-so next door doing that. She said, oh, and she almost implied that he was a friend. And I'm like, isn't it awful for you to be listening to that? And she's there, oh, no, I was watching the TV. Well, I'm like, I watch the TV too, but when I've got that racket going on outside, I can't hear the TV hardly. So there's something wrong with these Matrix people, or is it that they endure it because it's temporary and they don't care because they are part of the Matrix and they benefit from it. That's the only rational explanation I could find, even in an irrational Matrix, because but either way, that I'm sorry, I rambled on too long. Good night.